Welcome back to part 2 of the workshop battle arc of SIU's Manhwa series, Tower of God. If you missed the last episode in which we cover the first half of this long arc, please watch that video first. Without further ado, let's continue with the story. Back on stage, Io and Punk formally open the workshop battle with much fanfare. They then explain that there are going to be 2 rounds in the tournament. The first round, as Nak had already mentioned, is going to be an individual battle. Those who win there will move on to round 2, which will be a team tournament. Io explains that members of the teams in the second round will be chosen by team leaders that the organizers will pick based on their performance during the one-shot, one-opportunity game. And whichever team wins the second round wins the whole thing. Io then introduces the workshop battle audiences to the 10 gamblers, the participants who will serve as the team leaders during the second round. These are Shibisu, Mr. Mask, Gunter, Reflejo, Bellix, Hyungchung, Rodney, Mia, Devil Bon, and Ron May. Each of the 10 gamblers are exempted from participating in the first round battles. Instead, they're tasked with betting on its participants. The 6 gamblers who win the most money at the end of the first round will then be eligible to participate in round 2 of the workshop battle. Io adds that the money they win from the first round will be used to buy teammates and items to help them win round 2 of the tournament. With that out of the way, Io tells the 10 gamblers to prepare to place their bets, as he introduces the inaugural battle of the first round. It's a game called Plug, where 8 contestants participate. The goal of the game is to insert a large rod into one of the 3 available sockets in the middle of the stadium. As such, the first 3 contestants to successfully hook their plug to its socket wins. Other than that, it's a free-for-all. However, dropping your plug or falling outside the stadium constitutes an automatic fail. Io then adds that the game will only end when all 3 sockets have been plugged, regardless if there are fewer than 3 members left in the stadium. Io shows the first batch of contestants who will be playing. Wanyan sees his name on it, along with Arkraptor, Prince, and Misang. Both he and Arkraptor are happy that both Prince and Misang made it to the workshop battle. Io then tells the 10 gamblers that each of them will be given 500,000 points to use as their capital for betting on the contestants. Shibisu checks the list, and he and the rest of the gamblers place their bets. The game then starts, as Wanyan and Arkraptor rush toward the stadium to call for Misang and Prince. Their excitement is quelled, however, when Prince appears in front of them wearing a schoolboy's uniform and an extremely battered face. They ask him what happened, and all Prince can shout at his teammates is to run because she is coming. At that moment, Misang appears with a bloody plug in her hand, as Prince panics and tells his fellow teammates that the girl has gone crazy. Wanyan and Arkraptor notice that Misang seems to be acting differently. Meanwhile, a couple of random E-rank regulars named Bulgasario and Leg spot the little girl and assume that she's the weakest one around here. So they decide to gang up on Misang, but the little girl easily whacks the 2 of them with a single blow that sends them flying hundreds of feet above the stadium. Everyone from Wanyan to Bomb and the audience watching the game are in awe of what Misang just did. Back inside the gamblers' area, Shibisu is satisfied with himself after placing a bet on Misang, knowing full well that Verdi used her tricks on the little girl. Meanwhile, Mr. Mask, the same guy Shibisu and Anak came across earlier, is worried that the rest of his team might fail, as he surmises that Verdi did something to Misang. And it's here that we get the strong hint about Mr. Mask's true identity, Kun. In the middle of the stadium, Wanyan asks Prince what happened to Misang. All Prince knows is that Misang became super swole after putting a flower on her head. He then tells Wanyan and Arkraptor what happened to him and the little girl since they got separated from the rest of the team. It turns out that Misang was the first one that Verdi caught. Prince had tried to save her, but the Dollmaker's giant octopus easily knocked him out and nabbed him too. When he and Misang regained consciousness, they found themselves already inside the Archimedes. Verdi then told them that she wanted the 2 of them to be her dolls because they just looked so cute together. She had plans of marrying them to each other once they became her toys, so Misang and Prince naturally opposed this. But Verdi went on to give them a sales pitch and told them that they would become much stronger if they became her dolls. Verdi knew that they didn't stand a chance in the workshop battle with their current power levels, so the only way they could win the tournament was to accept her offer. All they had to do was put the flower on their head and say Lord Verdi is the best 3 times. In the end, Prince refused, but he found out that Misang took Verdi's offer when he came to pick her up right before the start of the competition. Meanwhile, the superpowered Misang continues to whack the other contestants on the field. The display is so shocking and brutal that even the hosts can't believe that a little girl like Misang can wreak this much havoc all by herself. Arkraptor then asks Prince if Verdi forced Misang to wear the flower, but Prince informs him that Misang did it on her own. The reason she accepted the Dollmaker's offer was because she blamed herself for Horyang and Veal's departure from Team Sweet and Sour. Misang thinks that their 2 wayward members would come back if she became stronger. After hearing that, Arkraptor tells Prince that they're going to save Misang. However, Prince starts to panic and tells his teammates that's a crazy idea. Arkraptor then scolds Prince for being such a wuss. He preferred the boy back when he was a cocky jerk who thought that even he could be jovial Grace, but now he can't even face a doll of an E-rank regular. With his pride hurt, Prince then decides to go out there and save Mi-sang. The little girl rushes toward them, so Arcraptor takes point and tells Prince to use his lighthouse to subdue her. Prince activates triple flow control to stop Mi-sang in her tracks, but the girl brute forces her way out of the technique and shatters it. Wanyan tries to provide backup, but Mi-sang wallops him away. She then turns her attention back to Prince and gets ready to give him the smackdown. Prince goes into full fight or flight mode at this point, and when he realizes that he has to rely on himself, Prince springs into action to block Mi-sang with his plug. They get into a deadlock, and Prince gets super hyped as he starts mocking and berating Mi-sang. She gets super angry after hearing Prince's jabs, but it turns out he was just setting her up to activate a technique called Real Inventory Interlocking Technique, Bora Bora Catch. This stops Mi-sang mid-swing, while Arcraptor jumps in from behind to remove Verity's flower from her hair. With Verity's hooks off her, Mi-sang goes back to normal and rests her head on Prince. She pleads with her teammate to stay with her and promises him that she's going to be stronger. Prince then promises her that he's not going anywhere because she still needs someone to take care of her. And with that, the game ends, with Arcraptor, Wanyan, and Prince emerging as its victors. They make their way off the stage, and Prince gets back to his old self when he sees Viol in the audience. He starts taunting the Slayer candidate, while Wanyan drags him to the exit. After that, the host announced the list of participants for the next 5 groups who will be participating in the game. The audiences are left in awe when they spot one of the participants' names on the list. Shibisu wonders why the crowd outside is making such a fuss. When he looks at the list of upcoming contestants, he finds that the Mad Dog of Yama, Varagarv, is in the 6th and final batch participating in the first round of the workshop battle. Later, Team Sweet and Sour watch over Mi-sang inside one of the private quarters in the stadium. We can all tell that she's basically the precious sweetheart of the team when everyone else chastises Prince for berating her during their fight. Suddenly, Verity walks in on them and the whole team starts to panic. But Verity's not there for a tussle. She just tells everyone that Mi-sang's going to be alright after she gets some rest. It turns out that she lost control of her powers and went berserk after using Verity's flower without her supervision. In fact, Verity tells him that she only found out that Mi-sang actually used her flower well after the fact. She then turns to Prince and tries to coax him again to be one of her dolls. Meanwhile, Wanyan notices the tip of a glowing blue wing walking past the doorway, and he guesses that Hwoarang must have taken a peek to check up on Mi-sang. Then, Yiwa informs Gosing that their names have come up on the tournament list. Gosing is in one group with Hwoarang and Chang, while Yiwa has found herself in another with Quaetro. Gosing looks forward to reuniting with Hwoarang, but she's anxious if the one-eyed man, referring to the Mad Dog, is in the same group as them. Not long after that, Io announces that groups 2 to 6 will play the plug game simultaneously in the stadium. Gosing waits behind the doors leading to the game area before the competition starts. She's scared to go out there, but knowing that Hwoarang will also be in the same group eases her mind a bit. The hosts then tell the gamblers to place their bets. Shibisu has become more cautious after losing the first round with Mi-sang, while Mr. Mask, or Kun, analyzes the best options among the current contestants. Mei just has fun with it, while Hyung-chung prays to Buddha to give him the right people to bet on. A few seconds later, the plug game begins, and Gosing goes out to the stadium. She sees the other contestants savagely goring one another the moment she enters the stage. The mere sight of their brutality freezes her in place, and one of the other regulars spots her. Thinking that she's easy prey, the regular then tries to attack Gosing, but Hwoarang comes to the rescue and knocks out the guy. He then checks up on Gosing, who tells him that her knees buckled when she saw the other guy. A short distance away, they hear Chang teasing them. They turn towards him, but Chang tells him that he's not there to fight them. Besides, he mentions that they're really not the main players of this game right now. Back at Group 5, the one Yiwa is in, Quaetro has let his inner freak flag fly as he burns everything and everyone in his path. He and Yiwa are the only ones left by the end of his crazed rampage. Quaetro asks how she's still alive, and Yiwa tells him that she's a flame user too. She's fireproof is what she means. Hearing that makes Quaetro ecstatic, so he invites Yiwa to commit some good old-fashioned arson with him. But Yiwa tells him to stop being such a pyromaniac and use his powers responsibly. Quaetro genuinely doesn't understand what the hell she's talking about, because according to him, flames are meant to burn and kill everything, so you've gotta love what you've got. At that point, Quaetro realizes that Yiwa is afraid of her own powers. So he starts to think she's weak sauce and turns his back on her to check on the other groups instead. Quaetro spots Group 6 and finds Varagarv surrounded by the other contestants. In fact, everyone has their eyes set on the Mad Dog of Yama right now, as Varagarv uncaringly and casually makes his way to the socket in the middle of their platform. Chang tells Gosing and Hwoarang that Varagarv is known as the strongest E-rank regular at the moment, though he hasn't taken any tests for a long time up until today. He then warns Hwoarang that it would be in his best interest to steer clear of the guy at all costs. Back at Group 6 stage, an E-rank regular named Amaguta challenges Varagarv to a duel. The Mad Dog of Yama just walks past the guy and tells him to cherish his life. This wounds Amaguta's ego, so he tries to sucker punch Varagarv, and without even lifting a finger, the Mad Dog pops Amaguta's head like a cherry. Seeing this shocks everyone, from Anak to Bomb, and just like that, Varigarv wins the game when he puts the plug in its socket. Bomb then notices Varigarv staring at him amidst the crowd's cheers. At that moment, Bomb remembers what Reflejo told him about this Ethel E rank regular. It turns out that Varigarv used to be a warrior for the secret canine fighting ground run by a Fug Slayer named Baylord Yama. Yama wanted to show off his mad dog strength, so he sent Varigarv to participate in the tower's tests in the past. Reflejo then went on to tell Bomb that Varigarv was the perfect warrior then, able to beat anyone he came across. But one day, he just stopped making the climb and even cut his ties with Fug. Reflejo then informed Bomb that there was a rumor circulating these days that Varigarv had become staunchly opposed to Fug, killing any challenger related to their organization. At that moment, Bomb realized that the reason Varigarv had entered the workshop battle was for the sole reason of fighting him. We then get caught up with Hats, who's inside a cell deep within the Acorn workshop. Hats has just freed himself from Kasano's restraints and notes that the devil might be a powerful fighter, but he sure sucks at tying ropes. However, Hats still has to deal with the problem of getting out of this jail. Without Kasano, the doors to his cell won't open. Plus, his pocket's signal is currently blocked, so he can't call for help. Out of other options, he tries using the Emily app again, and it tells him to look under his bed. Hats reluctantly takes Emily's advice and is surprised to discover that there's a trapdoor leading to an exit hidden under it. Hats opens the trapdoor and senses the Shinsu flow coming from below, and he can feel that the exit is connected to a much wider place. Hats wonders how Emily knew about this, but he takes the risk and descends the stairs to the exit. Back at the Archimedes Stadium, the first round is in full swing, as succeeding groups of contestants play the plug game. Throughout all this, the gamblers continue to place their bets, with each of them feeling the thrill of victory or the pain of defeat with every group that comes on stage. Except May, because she honestly is the only one who seems to be enjoying being a gambler here. The hosts then give us a lowdown on the other participants who have won their games. We learned that Endorsi was the only one to win it in Group 7. Group 9 saw the tandem of Violga and Redong as its victors. Group 10 was won by a single competitor named Bathman Bundawan. A couple of creepy monsters named Tebow and Rebo took the W in Group 12. Verdi and Vespa dominated Group 14, and at Group 15, we discover that Dan and Rack have teamed up to win their game under the aliases Red Hawk and Din. Bomb notices that Red Hawk is actually Rack, but his attention is diverted when his name finally pops up on the list. He finds out that he'll be participating in Group 19 with a bunch of other random regulars. The crowd sees Jovial Grace's name on the boards and they get absolutely hyped. Novik tells him to take it easy, and he then proceeds to his designated area. Shortly after, the game starts for Bomb and he starts to rush toward the sockets. However, he's taken aback when he sees that a few contestants in his group wearing Fug tank tops have opened a path for him toward the sockets. They tell him that they're hardcore Jovial Grace fanboys and they'll block anyone trying to stop him from reaching the sockets. From the stands, Chang tells Wanyan that those guys are a bunch of posers. They're just pretending to worship Viol for now, but they're really trying to take advantage of him. According to Chang, these guys know that it's far riskier to face off with a Slayer candidate, so they're just going to let him win the game, and then split the remaining sockets among themselves after that. Plus, making the other contestants think that the tank top boys are with Viol would make them hesitate to attack them, which means they can easily eliminate the competition. Chang finds that this whole group made the game boring, but Wanyan tells him that Viol is not the kind of guy who would take the easy way out like that. Back on stage, Bomb approaches the fanboys and asks them what the hell they think they're doing. One of them keeps up the charade, but Bomb tells him that he doesn't need their help. He can win this game with his own power. He then tells the posers to stop trying to make him their god because he's not some convenient machine that will make their wishes come true. Then, Bomb nonchalantly force pushes one of them with his Shinsu before asking the rest if they think he's still their god now. The fanboys reveal their true nature and try ganging up on Bomb, but he easily disposes of them with a mix of Shinsu attacks and some textbook manslaughter. Chang sees this from the stands and admits that he's amused to discover that Bomb isn't some prissy little brat, that he's an honest-to-goodness tyrant. Meanwhile, Shibisu is perplexed with Viol's actions, and even the host can't help but ask what he's thinking behind that long, luscious hair of his. In a different corner of the stadium, Endorsi and Anak watch Viol clean house in Group 19. Anak then tells Endorsi that the way Viol fights seems familiar. She then tells Endorsi that she caught a glimpse of Viol's face back in the middle area when they attacked Fug, and when she looked at his eyes then, they reminded her of Bomb's. A bit later, Endorsi sits on her pull chair alone and thinks about what Anak told her earlier. Add that to the Traveler's revelations, and Endorsi now can't really shake off the feeling that Jovial Grace and Bomb are one and the same person. She goes on to check more details about Jovial Grace and discovers that there's not one bit of information about the Fug Slayer candidate prior to his appearance on the tower's 20th floor. At this moment, Endorsi can all but confirm her suspicions, but she's well aware that she can't confront Viol about it, given that his other Fug teammates are always around him. Plus, talking to him directly would cause a scandal in the tower, since let's not forget, Dorsey is a princess of Jahan, and she can't be seen talking to high-level criminals like Viol. So, Dorsey comes up with a plan to try and have a conversation with him during the Archimedes cruise party happening later that night. Somewhere else, Novik tells Viol that he did a good job during the game. We also find out that Shia has just passed the first round before the hosts announce the next batch of participants in the plug game. Novik finds out that he's going to be in Group 23, with their other teammates Yuto and Kasano finding themselves in Group 22. Bob then wishes Novik well, as he and Rand make their way to the stadium's main area. Shia heads over to the private resting room, but not before telling Bob not to tell her that he can't make their wishes come true, because according to her, a god who can't do that is useless to them. Meanwhile, Novik confides in Rand and tells him that this workshop battle is getting all kinds of weird. For one, he noticed it when Group 1's team mentioned that they were going to get back Viol. For another, Novik saw it when Viol tried to hide his face from Shibisu's group during the one-shot, one-opportunity game. Novik's not sure what's going on, but he does know that Viol is hiding his past from them. Hearing that, Rand wonders why Fug would even send Viol to this event, considering the organization must have known that there were going to be people here who knew Viol's past. And with that, the two realize that this conspiracy goes deeper. They're almost at the main area's entrance when a guy in a hoodie and shades walks past them. Rand senses something about the guy and tells Novik that the stranger isn't human. We then find Bob mulling over what Shia told him about being a useless god. In the meantime, the event goes on and the competitors fiercely battle in their respective groups. Bob decides to watch the games, which makes him realize that each and every contestant here has something to fight for, except for him. In the end, all he can think about is where Rachel is right now. But as for the results of the preceding games, we find out that Novik had an easy go of it. Bob then walks back to his room to find that the same guy in the hoodie that Rand and Novik walked past earlier is sitting on his bed. Back on the main stage, Ayo announces that there's one last group that will be playing the plug game, and this one will serve as the day's grand finale. We then get caught up with the 10 gamblers and find out that Shibisu has only recouped his capital, Kun has 1,000,000 points, and so does Reflejo, and for the first time today, Mei has lost that smile on her face after losing 490,000 credits from her losses, putting her in the last spot among the 10. As it stands, Mei, Hyungchung, and Bellix are on their way to getting eliminated from the second round of the workshop battle. On the other hand, Shibisu and Rodney, with both men sharing the same number of points right now, need a tiebreaker to determine which between them will make it to the next phase of the event. Ayo then makes the announcement that one of the 3 final groups in the first round will include 2 of the top 5 E-rank regulars in the tower, Anak and Ran. Shibisu hears this and starts to get anxious knowing that a bout between these two instantly means that one of them is going to lose. However, Ayo also announces that the gamblers are now allowed to go all in with their bets, which would net them an extra 3,000,000 points if they win. Both Shibisu and Kun feel anxious about going all in. Shibisu knows that betting all his credits and winning the 3,000,000 points would instantly propel him to the top of the standings. But Kun is aware that it's too risky to put all your eggs in one basket at this point. Kun knows that only one of either Ran or Anak will win here, so the chances of winning are purely 50-50. Shibisu knows this as well, and he ponders betting small during this round on the off chance that his 500,000 points will be enough to put him in the top 6 by the time the game's over. But Shibisu remembers that the reason he's made it this far up the tower isn't because of his strength or intellect alone. He had amazing teammates with whom he could trust his life with, so Shibisu decides to put his faith and all his credits on Anak. The final plug game then starts and we find out that Pericule is also participating in another group. Shibisu spots the green-skinned regular and wonders if Rak is in the workshop battle too. In fact, even Rak is surprised that Pericule signed up for the event. As usual, Pericule tries to put on airs before the fight, and then immediately eats humble pie when all the other contestants start giving one another blunt force trauma when the bell rings. The other final 2 groups vying for their own sockets on their respective stages start to tear and gore one another. But it's different in Group 29, as Ran and Anak almost calmly remain in place as they try to size each other up. Up on the stands, Wanyan asks Chang who he thinks will win between the 2 E-rank regulars, considering he's a member of the top 5 too. Chang then tells him that Anak would win if the game was all about raw strength. However, Chang thinks that Ran has a more diverse skill set, which makes him more versatile. So he thinks that Ran will come out on top in this particular game. Ayo protests at first, but he ultimately accepts Ran's proposal when the boy makes him realize that it's a sure thing that either he or Anak will win this game. Plus, he gets an order from his earpiece telling him to agree to it, since it's what the fans want. As such, Ran proposes that Ayo allow him and Anak to just fight for a single spot in the next round of the workshop battle without interruption from the other contestants in their group. The rest of the contestants can just fight over the remaining 2 sockets. In fact, the random regulars on the stage completely agree with this, since they know that Anak and Ran are well beyond their pay grade. Anak agrees with Ran's terms and the 2 prepare to tussle. However, Anak notices Ran eating something before they even proceed with their duel. The princess tries to sucker punch Rand by attacking him before he can swallow whatever it is he just ate. Anak sends him flying, but Rand ultimately manages to swallow the pill, which changes his hairstyle and makes a star-shaped mole grow on his right cheek. Anak is then taken by surprise when Rand barrages her with a lightning attack before teleporting behind her and hitting her with a gigantic blast of blue light. Back inside Bomb's room, we find out that the guy in the hoodie is none other than Beta, the new living weapon that Sophia was working on at the Acorn workshop. He tells him that he only came there to meet Viol because they're alike. They're both living ignition weapons. We then find out that nobody sent Beta to go after Viol. He escaped the Acorn workshop and now Sophia and the rest of the guards are looking for him. We also see that Leroro has found out about this in the middle of his infiltration of the Acorn workshop. Back at the stadium, Kasano receives a message from Sophia informing him about the current situation. While all this is happening, Anak and Rand have a tremendous showdown where not even the live audiences of the workshop battle are safe. In fact, one of the blasts from their attacks even spills over to the other groups participating in the tournament, as it inadvertently disintegrates one of the random contestants in Pericule's group, leaving only their arm when the dust settles. At this point, Anak is not at all impressed with Rand's performance. She thinks that he's wasting all his energy, since none of his attacks have managed to land on her in spite of how powerful they are. Rand then tries to engage Anak in close-quarter combat with a charged-up fist, but the princess just leaps away, telling him that's a stupid move because fighting at this range is her specialty. She then prepares to give Rand a solid punch, but the jacked-up boy is able to parry it with his foot. At this moment, Anak is shocked to find out that someone can match her raw strength. She's then forced to go on the defensive when Rand immediately follows up with a high kick to her face. Anak blocks it, and the two start trading blows. It's an even exchange until Rand catches her with another one of his kickflips that hits her square in the jaw, just like during their first bout. Anak gets more annoyed after this and tries to swipe him with her tail, but he just blocks this before sending her flying into a wall with a supercharged soccer kick. Anak recovers from the blow and asks Rand what kind of performance-enhancing pill it was that he took, and the boy tells her everything. He reveals that it's called a lightning pill made from his concentrated bang. When eaten, the pill interacts with the electric currents inside the user's body, which allows them to gain explosive powers. Rand tells her that it's an advanced technique that only a few top members of the Kun family can perform. Plus, he reveals that the mole that grew on his face is called a trace, which is basically an indicator that the lightning pill is active in his body. Then, Rand tells Anak that the effect of the drug only lasts 5 minutes. Hearing this, Anak asks Rand if he really should be telling her that, to which Rand replies that all he needs is 5 minutes to beat her. This just makes Anak even more furious, as she lunges at her opponent and assaults him with a series of punches. Rand blocks each and every one of them until he finds an opening and uses his electrically charged arm to grab Anak by the neck and hurl her full force toward another wall using Machete-style lightning spear technique, Deadly Lightning. Anak gets up and she's angrier than ever. She charges up her bangs to shoot Rand. At the same time, Shibisu can only desperately shout for her to stop, because he knows that she's falling deeper into Rand's trap. Anak tries to bombard Rand with her Shinsu, but they all miss as he zooms past them at lightning speed. When he gets in range of Anak, Rand then hits her with a technique called Machete-style fighting technique, Arch Lightning, which sends her flying several meters back. At this point, Kun gives us a lowdown on how to beat Rand, and it's simple. Wait out the 5 minutes, because Rand would lose all his strength after the lightning pill wears off. This explains why Rand kept on provoking Anak. He knows that he only has a short amount of time to beat her, so he made sure to play on her insecurities to make sure that she doesn't run away and hide until the lightning pill's effects disappear. At this point, Rand has completely given Anak a classic beatdown, and to make sure his opponent doesn't get up, Rand charges the devastating technique called Machete-style lightning spear technique, Deadly Weapon Sword of Light, which pierces the lizard princess straight through the midsection. Meanwhile, Bomb doesn't believe Beta when he refers to himself as a living ignition weapon. The boy expresses his disappointment at Viol Grace for knowing nothing, despite Viol being what Beta refers to as the completed. In fact, Bomb has no idea what even the completed is, to which Beta says it's not surprising, since he doesn't even know how to wake up his devil. Beta then tells Viol to think about why Fug decided to make him participate in the workshop battle and try to win the whole thing. He then tells the Slayer candidate that the winning prize of the workshop battle is special because it will belong to the winner forever. Beta asks Viol to think about what this prize might be, and then he points to his phone and tells Viol to ask Emily about it. He's going to find the answers there. However, Beta also tells him that Viol will also learn about the sin that he has to make up for once he goes down this rabbit hole. He then bids Viol farewell and tells him they'll see each other at the party, and again, Beta calls him the completed one. Back at the stadium, we find out that Rand's blue lightning spear thrust was so powerful that it slammed the princess down on the stage and even caused all the other contestants to get thrown down into the water below. We even see Pericule yelling for someone to save him from drowning. Rand then approaches Anak to rub salt on her wound by telling her that her arrogance caused her to lose the match. Little does she know that the lizard girl is still conscious. When Rand turns his back thinking that he already won, Anak suddenly sits up and tells him they're not done yet. She's going to kill him before the 5 minutes are up. She then tells Rand that she didn't run and hide because she was arrogant. It's because she couldn't. Anak then rushes toward Rand, who wonders how she's able to withstand the kind of injury he dealt her. Anak hits him with a couple of shots that he's easily able to block, and Rand notices that Anak's hurt so bad right now that she can't even perform basic body reinforcement. So Rand tries to corner the princess before trying to hit her with a lightning blast. But Anak has gone beast mode at this point. She punches the ground before he can even release his lightning, which causes large blocks of concrete to fly up. They then use a couple of the debris as platforms, and Rand can't believe that Anak still has the juice to keep banging. They then go into an intense standoff again, and Anak taunts Rand by asking him if he's scared. Rand brushes this off and suddenly launches another machete-style lightning spear technique, Deadly Lightning. But Anak just jumps away from the blast before launching herself at her enemy. The two combatants trade blows again, and their clash ends in another stalemate, as both Anak and Rand's power inevitably throw them back several feet from each other. Back inside the gambler's room, Kun notes that Rand has this fight in the bag. Anak is already at her limit. And given that there's some distance between the two, all it would take for Rand to win is to launch another ranged attack against her. But for some reason, Anak's japes earlier managed to claw at Rand's own insecurities. So he launches himself straight towards Anak and loads up a lightning charge punch. Kun sees this and he's absolutely disappointed that Rand fell for Anak's own trap. At this point, the lightning pill's effects are almost gone, so Anak and Rand bet everything on this one final clash, as they aim for each other's head with balled fists. Anticlimactically enough, Anak and Rand both get knocked down when Pericule suddenly emerges from the water right below the platform where the two Ace E-rank regulars just struck each other with their final blows. With Anak losing all her strength and Rand's lightning pill wearing off at this very moment, the two fall unconscious in the water and both of them end up losing the contest. Meanwhile, Pericule emerges as the sole victor from the groups that just participated, drawing the shock and disappointment of gamblers like Kun and Shibisu. Meanwhile, we discover that Bomb has just used Emily to ask the chatbot about the grand prize of this year's workshop battle, and we get the big reveal that the organizers are planning on giving Jovial Grace, the living ignition weapon, away to the winner of the tournament. Inside the Archimedes intruder jail, the traveler racks his brain to try and think of a way to escape his cell and save Emily. He gets so frustrated that he can't help but yell about it in frustration, which the prisoner in the cell next to him overhears. The other guy asks the traveler if he also snuck into the ship to try and save Emily. Then the traveler catches on to what's really happening when one by one, the prisoners inside the intruder jail reveal that Emily sent each one of them here to rescue her. So yeah, it turns out Emily is kind of a playgirl. We then catch up with Hats, who's currently making his way down the ladder he found in his cell inside the Acorn workshop. He reaches the bottom to find a large room with a locked door at the end. There's a glowing red digital keyhole on the door, and Hats realizes he needs a key to open it. Strangely enough, Hats starts hearing voices coming from the other side of the room, telling him to rescue them. Suddenly, a patrol robot called the Level 60 Gagua Crab appears behind Hats and tries to smash him with its claw. Hats dodges in the nick of time, but the robot then lunges at him. Hats sidesteps it, and at this moment, he scans the whole room to find a weapon he can use to fight the patrol robot. Hats spots a pipe on one of the room's walls, so he takes it and uses it as a sword. Knowing that it's going to easily break because it's hollow, Hats infuses the center of the pipe with Shinzu before smashing it against the giant crab's dome. But the patrol robot's carapace is just too thick. Hats' makeshift weapon bends as the Gagua crab aims its Shinzu blasters directly at him. The crab shoots him with energy, but Hats is able to react and parry each one of them with the pipe. He then moves several feet back to recompose himself and put 100% of his focus in reinforcing his makeshift weapon. The crab tries to blast him again, but Hats lunges forward and blocks the Shinsu blast on his way to the Gagua crab's eye. When he gets here, Hats uses Demonic Fish Wheel Dance, White Wave Devil Tearing Single Slash Annihilation to drive a sword through the patrol robot's weak point. His attack works, but the Gagua crab suddenly activates its self-destruct sequence. Hats notices he doesn't have enough time to make for some cover. Suddenly, a man dressed in an Acorn Workshop guard's uniform hops on top of the dying Gagua crab and uses Danyan-style weapon reinforcement technique, Lightning Strike, to short out the robot's systems and prevent it from self-destructing. Hats is in awe of what he just saw and wonders who this man is. The Acorn Workshop guard then approaches Hats and tells him that he improved, but he's still reckless. At that moment, Hats recognizes who the voice belongs to, as the guard takes off his helmet to reveal none other than Lero Ro. Hats asks Ro what's happened to the test floor if he's here right now, to which he tells the boy that he quit his old job and is now doing something part-time. Hats asks if Ro is in league with the workshop now, and the former examiner denies this. According to him, he currently has to keep an eye on someone. Hats then asks Ro if he knows the exit to the Acorn Workshop, telling him that he has to participate in the first round of the workshop battle. Ro answers that he does know the way out, but breaks out the news that the first round of the event has just finished, so there's no use for Hats to go back to the stadium. At that moment, Ro's radio picks up a message from the other workshop guards informing their squad that the cruise party is starting soon. After that, Ro asks Hats if he wants to help him with his gig, since he's not going to be competing in the workshop battle anymore. The swordsman asks what kind of job it is, and Ro tells him that they're going to stop the workshop from making the worst weapon. Evening comes, and the Archimedes cruise party kicks off. One of Madarako's henchmen informs him about this, and the high ranker declares that it won't be long before he gets his hands on Juvio Grace. At the party, Wanyan is absolutely depressed that Kun failed to make the next round after losing his bet on Ran. But Arcraptor reassures him that maybe there's still hope, since the organizers called all the 10 gamblers to a meeting. Chang then tries to console Wanyan by telling him that he passed the first round, so he can just work with a different team then. But Wanyan is a one-team kind of guy. He doesn't want to play with other people. Arcraptor then tells him that Kun will do everything to stay in the game. Their conversation is interrupted, however, when Endorsi arrives and everyone becomes smitten with her. Just outside the party, Ran is sulking when he and Anak meet by chance. Anak asks him how he's able to move after taking the lightning pill, and Ran reveals that he controlled the dosage of the drug to stay functional in the event that he won the game and moved to the next round. The two kids start throwing shade at each other's fighting capability before Ran decides to go back to his room. Before leaving though, Ran asks Anak if she knows Viol. She doesn't answer and instead throws a question back at him, asking Ran why he wants to know. Ran keeps it cool and simply says that it seems Viol knows her team as he leaves the venue. We then see Horyang, Novik, and Xia on the red carpet leading to the entrance of the event when a couple of kids wearing pumpkin masks tell Horyang that he won a raffle to go on a date. The kids drag him to the party and find out that he's going to spend the evening with Go Sang. The two then have a romantic evening, and we find out that the two kids in pumpkin masks are Mi Sang and Prince. And at this point, we also discover that Verity is pining for them to go back and be her dolls. Go Sang and Horyang then have a chat after dancing, and she apologizes to him for suggesting that they quit the test and just live out their lives outside the tower. Had she known Horyang's reasons for the climb, she wouldn't have mentioned something like that. However, Horyang cuts her off when he reveals to Go Sang that he's found Sophia. Sophia's happy for Horyang, but we soon discover that the big guy is in a dark place right now. He tells Go Sang that Sophia and the workshop are still doing living ignition weapon experiments, and they even managed to create another one too, referring to Beta. He then reveals that Sophia was in on it all along, before telling Go Sang that the only reason he and Kasano survived the experiments was because of the love she gave them. But now that he's discovered that it's all been a ruse, he wonders if he and his brother are really nothing more than a couple of devils. In the meantime, we find Kasano using the Emily app, and he has just received a message telling him that she, referring to Sophia, doesn't love Kasano. Somewhere else, Rak is giving Pericule a much-deserved beating for winning the plug game and ultimately ruining the original plans to save Bomb. Yiwa is with him too, as the girl tells Rak to calm down. But Rak isn't having any of it anymore. Now he plans to head straight into the party and grab Bomb. Yiwa tries to stop him, but the Crocodile Warrior just tells her to come with him. All the while, we find out that Endorsi has been keeping an eye on Bomb at the party. At the same time, the 10 gamblers have gathered inside the private banquet of the venue. We find out that of the 10 gamblers, only May and Reflejo were able to actually get into the second round of the tournament. That's because the rest of them either went all in on Ran or Anak, which ended with them losing all their points. Shortly after, Io walks into the banquet and apologizes for his tardiness because he was busy kicking out the jams as part of the cruise party's house band. Kun immediately protests that the bets made during the final game of the first round should be voided. He goes on to explain that since Ran and Anak were operating under separate special rules during the game, Pericule's interference during their final clash constitutes a breach of those special rules, which then renders the results of their bout null. In addition to that, Kun explains that since Pericule was under the original rules of the plug game, and since he fell into the water, he should have been automatically eliminated right then and there. The point is, his interruption is clearly against the agreed rules of the contest. Shibisu seconds this motion and adds that Ran and Anak's battle should be rendered a no contest, since an outside force, Pericule, interfered in their game. Io basically tells the gamblers that he's sorry they feel that way, but the workshop is going to do what the hell it wants. Still, the event can't proceed with only a couple of gamblers proceeding to the second round of the contest, so he introduces a new game to the 8 losers called the Growth Tournament. Somewhere else, we find out that Endorsi has lost track of Viol after stalking him the entire night. She gets frustrated, especially considering that she thought the Emily app would have given her Viol's correct location. Endorsi then realizes that he must have fed Emily false information to shake her off his tail. Back at the party, we discover the Acorn Workshop's guards doing a thorough search for Beta on the ground, while the blindfolded boy sits high atop the building where the cruise party is being held. Bomb arrives and correctly surmises that Beta uses this spot to feed Emily all the information it needs when users try to locate someone or something within the area. He then asks Beta why the guards are looking for him, and the boy tells him that he escaped the Acorn Workshop because he was bored being trapped in there. Beta then asks him why he wanted to meet, and Bomb replies by saying he wants to know about the ignition weapon that Fug placed inside him. The boy tells Bomb that it's impossible to ignite it if that's what he was planning to do. Beta then reveals that the weapon inside Bomb is just a replica of a much more powerful weapon he only refers to as the Needle, which they put inside him to help get his body used to the infusion. The workshop possesses the real one, and that's what Fug ultimately wants to place inside Bomb. Beta then tells him that the authentic needle is inside the water stadium, and if he wants to grab it, Bomb could do it by getting a ticket to the final tournament. But then, Beta proposes an alternative, one that will help Bomb retrieve the needle without having to work with Fug. To that end, the boy tells Bomb that he can always just sneak into the water stadium and steal it. Later that night, after the party, Kun meets with the rest of Team Sweet and Sour and tells them all about the growth tournament. He explains that 8 groups will be duking it out, and the winner of that contest will then fight the winning team between Team Mad Dog and Team Fug. Kun tells him that the rules of the growth tournament are simple. First, the leader, Kun, chooses a spearhead to start the game. The leader can then buy more teammates with the points that he accrues to grow his team and advance to the finals. Arkraptor asks if the same rules apply to Team Fug and Team Mad Dog, to which Kun says that they'll be participating with their respective original lineups, since their leaders, May and Reflejo, legitimately passed the first round. Plus, since Team Fug and Team Mad Dog have been aiming for each other from the start, they instantly agreed when they found out that they'll be facing each other from the onset of the second round. Kun then reveals that the spearhead he chose to start the growth tournament for their team is Wanyan. It turns out that each team is given 100,000 points at the beginning of this game, and Wanyan is the cheapest. Kun then advises Wanyan that his mission is to win the quarterfinals of the growth tournament while spending as few points as possible. But Kun's pooped at this point, so he tells everyone they'll talk about it later and asks where Rak is. Somewhere else, Yiwa and Rak have located Bomb's private quarters. Yiwa's worried that Bomb's Fug teammates might catch what they're doing, but the crocodile throws caution to the wind as he rushes toward Bomb's room. He and Yiwa sneak past Shia, who's currently blitzed from a night of drinking. But just when they were about to reach Bomb's room, Rak bumps into Endorsi, who has resumed her search for Viol. Endorsi recognizes Rak, but he denies it. The two get into a short argument when Bomb suddenly appears in front of them. Meanwhile, Kun lies in bed and stares into the ceiling of his room, and all he can hope right now is that Rak hasn't done anything stupid. Unknown to him, Rak has gone way past that point, as he and Bomb lock eyes in front of his room. And from there, chaos ensues, as Endorsi instantly springs into action and calls for Juvial Grace to come with her. Bomb instinctively rushes past the three, and we're off to a foot chase. Rak and Endorsi run after Bomb, who panically wonders how they got past his Fug teammates. But there's no time to think. Bomb knows his secret can't get out. So he uses Blue Ore, a Shinsu technique that he copied from Ranker Love to get as far away from his old friends as possible. Little did he realize that while Rak and Endorsi were chasing him, Yiwa already circled around the block to cut him off. She tries to grab him, which forces Bomb to lose his Blue Ore. However, Bomb spins around to avoid Yiwa and tries to escape on foot. He thinks he's safe as he approaches a corner, but for the first time in a long while, Paracule does everyone a solid as he blocks Bomb's path while shouting his trademark "Revolution! Freedom!" phrase. Rak catches up to Bomb and tackles him to the ground. And with that, Juvial Grace's cover has been blown. It's a tearful reunion, as Rak hugs his old friend tightly, happily to finally confirm that Bomb is alive. Endorsi's right behind them, and she's slack-jawed to realize that it really is Bomb right in front of them. But moving somewhere else, we fans are treated to a classic romantic scene between Horyang and Gosang, as he walks her home after their date. They bid each other goodnight, but Horyang can't seem to walk away from Gosang. Horyang tells himself that he wants to stay with Gosang a little longer. Not only that, but he admits that he misses his old teammates. At that moment, Horyang asks his sweetheart if he can come back to Team Sweet and Sour after the tournament, as he tells himself that he has already found the people that will save him. Back at Bomb's, Rak has him locked in an embrace, as his friend tells him that he won't forgive the people who turned him into Juvial Grace. At this point, Bomb knows the jig is up, so he hugs Rak back and reveals his true identity to him, Endorsi, and Yiwa. Rak then tells Bomb to come with him so that they can bring back their old trio together with Kun, but he refuses. They suddenly hear one of his Fug teammates approaching, so Bomb urges Rak to leave for now. However, Rak isn't going to let this opportunity slide. He tries his best to take Bomb with him, and the two almost get into a shouting match, so Endorsi intervenes and picks up Rak before Bomb's Fug captors arrive. Bomb mentions Endorsi, and the princess tells him to come back to them soon or he's going to miss their date. Endorsi then runs towards the ledge, calls for Yiwa to come with them, and they jump off the building. Then the princess summons Bongbong in mid-air to teleport the three of them to safety. At that moment, Reflejo and Novik arrive at Bomb's location. The Fug fisherman asks the Slayer candidate if something happened, and Bomb says it's all good. A few seconds later, Bongbong transports Endorsi, Rak, Yiwa, and even Paracule to the middle of a forest. After things settle down, Endorsi demands Rak to tell him everything that he's hiding. We then find Novik and Bomb standing in the middle of the hallway near his room. Novik says that he's going back to bed, and Bomb thanks him just as he was about to leave. It turns out that Novik was the one responsible for getting Shia drunk and for getting Reflejo out of the building to allow Rak and the others to meet him. Novik tells him that he just really wanted to find out what Viol's relationship was with Endorsi and the others. And since Novik basically knows Bomb's secret now too, he asks him for one more favor. Novik asks Bomb what he wants, and Bomb tells him that he wants Novik to fight with him at the tournament tomorrow so that he can leave Team Fug. Not too far away, we find out that Reflejo knows that Jovial Grace's true identity has been revealed to his old friends, which means his agreement with Fug has been broken. So Reflejo tells someone in the shadows that they don't have to abide by their deal anymore. They then decide to order the gamblers to eliminate each and every one of Viol's teammates, from his old friends on the test floor right up to Team Sweet and Sour at tomorrow's tournament. Somewhere far away, Beta sees all of these events transpire. He maniacally laughs while sitting on a ledge somewhere on the Archimedes, as he rejoices that he's about to turn Bomb's life into a living hell. Suddenly, a workshop guard appears behind Beta with a rifle aimed directly at the living ignition weapon's head, telling the boy to go back to his cage. Beta refuses and activates his powers, summoning a foot-shaped wing on his back to kick the guard before jumping off the Archimedes and towards the water down below. All the while, Beta shouts at the guards to tell Sophia that this is all her fault for turning people like him into weapons. He promises he will show everyone the kind of despair they've created with the living ignition weapons as Beta disappears into the sea. The next day, the workshop battle's last tournament commences at the Water Stadium as Io introduces audiences to the grand event. The chosen spearheads from each group participating in the growth tournament prepare for the beginning of the games. Io then explains how the final leg of the workshop battle event is going to go. According to him, the Water Stadium, which is the size of an island, has been divided into two sections, the north and south. Team Fug and Team Mad Dog will be facing each other in the north, while the participants of the growth tournament will play their games in the south. In the end, the winner of the growth tournament will face the winner between Team Fug and Team Mad Dog in the workshop battle's final round. Io then moves on to tell us all about the growth tournament. In this game, each team's spearhead is tasked with gathering points for their respective leaders, the gamblers. The spearheads can then either go to the area's designated calling center to buy and activate new teammates for their team, or the spearhead can head to the item store to buy items that will help them in the game. As of right now, all spearheads are currently preparing at the non-battle area. When Io blows the horn, they have 30 minutes to move up the stadium and reach the battlefield, or else they'll automatically get eliminated from the contest. The contestants are then divided into two groups, with each group containing 4 teams. Each team within a group has been assigned with their own enemy team. In the case of Kun's team, the spearhead is Wanyan, who is then directly matched up with their enemy team spearhead, T-Bo and Rebo. Now, regulars within the same group can freely attack one another, but to move on to the next round, a team must be able to eliminate the spearhead from the enemy team assigned to them. That means Wanyan and his team can attack the other spearheads from Group A, but they can only move to the next stage of the contest when they defeat T-Bo and Rebo, the spearheads directly assigned to be their main opponent in this contest. With the rules out of the way, Io then declares the start of the growth tournament. Shortly after that, we find Wanyan hacking his way through a dense jungle inside the Water Stadium. All the while, he and Kun communicate via Lighthouse, as he remarks that the growth tournament is more of a survival game than an actual, tournament. Kun analyzes the rules and realizes that it's entirely possible for 3 of the teams within their group to gang up on the other. Wanyan then wonders how it's possible that the spearhead of the enemy team assigned to them is made up of 2 people, T-Bo and Rebo. Both he and Kun wonder if T-Bo and Rebo are just 2 creatures in one, or if one of them is actually a fake. In any case, Kun instructs Wanyan not to engage them in a fight unless they have a plan. Wanyan then asks Kun how they should reach the battlefield within 30 minutes. Kun replies that they won't be using the log bridge, which is the fastest way to get there, because the other teams might be waiting in that area for an ambush. So, Kun tells Wanyan to take the path through the eastern beach. It's going to take more time, but it's a straight shot from the calling center. This way, he and Wanyan can summon one of their teammates as soon as possible. Wanyan asks who Kun is planning on activating first, but the light bearer keeps it close to the chest. At the log bridge, Kun's suspicions are confirmed when we find Team Bellix's spearhead, Bathman Bundawan, trying to look for someone to destroy. Bathman runs into their team's designated enemy spearhead waiting to ambush him. So, Bellix commands Bathman to kill the fool. The gambler even gives us a sweet origin story for the heavyset spearhead. According to him, Bathman disguised himself as a Tamiri, a scrubber, at a Korean bathhouse who had a sick habit of skinning people alive. Bathman was then beheaded as punishment after he got caught, but he ultimately survived and ended up becoming a regular here in the tower. Bathman and his enemy then go at it. Their fight ends in a matter of seconds, as the rotund spearhead easily defeats his opponent before kicking his lifeless body off the bridge. Somewhere else, Shibisu blames himself for losing in the first round. However, Vespa, his chosen spearhead for the game, tells him to buck up and focus on getting Viol back. Hearing Viol's name reminds Shibisu about the previous night when Anak told him there was something strange about Viol. But the Lizard Princess didn't give him any details and instead told Shibisu to just look into it. He also noticed how Dorsey was acting weirder than usual the night before, and now he just feels like an alienated dad. Still, he shakes off the feeling and tells Vespa that they're going to clear things up once they get to Viol. While all this is happening, we then discover that Beta has washed ashore on the beach. At the same time, Novik and Bomb are at the old monk house inside the northern area's battle temple preparing to head out for their fight against Team Mad Dog. At the same time, Varagarv meets the rest of his team to get ready for their bout. He then asks me where their other teammates, the Wave Controller Pandit and the Spear Bearer Groban are. She tells the Mad Dog that they're already in position. and at that moment, both Team Fug and Team Mad Dog head to the location of their match. On the way there, Shia tried to apologize to Reflejo for getting drunk the previous night, but Reflejo tells her to forget about it and just focus on the game. Shia thinks it's weird that the Fug fisherman just let the infraction slide. Bomb then walks beside Reflejo and asks him more details about Verigarv. He then reveals that, like other Mad Dogs, Verigarv was created using blood transfusion coming from 2 or more powerful bloodlines. The result is that Mad Dogs are extremely more powerful than regulars. Reflejo then warns Bomb to not fight Verigarv one-on-one. Instead, they should take out his teammates first and gang up on the Mad Dog afterwards. However, Bomb tells Reflejo that he doesn't want to shed unnecessary blood, so he proposes that they catch Verigarv as fast as they can. To do that, Bomb orders Reflejo and the other members of his team to block Verigarv's teammates while he confronts the Mad Dog by himself. Above the northern area of the water stadium, Punk explains how Team Fug and Team Mad Dog's game will go. In this contest, Team Fug is tasked with retrieving a key that will open the door to the winning prize from the Battle Temple Shrine that's guarded by Team Mad Dog. If Team Fug gets the key, they win. If not, they lose. But in addition to that, there are a couple of invading points on the field that belong to Team Fug. If Team Mad Dog manages to take these invading points from them, Bomb and his group loses. Punk then does a countdown to start their game. Back in the south, Wanyan has finally reached the calling center after taking the detour that Kun showed him. He then enters a cave where a small robot, the calling center guy named R7, instructs him how to summon new teammates to the field. R7 leads Wanyan to the end of the cave where he finds the pond of calling. All Wanyan has to do is call the name of the teammate they want to summon and they'll emerge from the pond. However, each spearhead needs 2 things to summon a new teammate. First, their team has to have enough points to buy the teammate they want to call forth. Second, the summoned teammate must consent to join whoever summoned them. Additionally, R7 tells him that you can also use your points to repurchase a gambler who has failed the game once. R7 then explains that 50,000 points are deducted from every team every 30 minutes. However, teams can earn 100,000 points for every regular they defeat from another team and 500,000 points if they manage to take down a spearhead. Wanyan then asks Kun who he wants to summon first. Kun checks his screen and sees that the names of members from Team Fug and Team Mad Dog are on the list too. However, they're currently unavailable for purchase, which allows Kun to determine that they'll become available if they happen to lose in their respective contests in the north. Kun even sees Bomb's name on the list under the Jovial Grace alias and takes note that he can call his old friend to his team should he lose to Verigarv. But Kun also notices that, like Verigarv, Bomb's the most expensive potential teammate you can recruit in the game, with he and Verigarv each priced at 1 million points. So Kun decides to go with their original plan and tell Wanyan to summon Quatro Blitz. Wanyan tries to protest why Kun wants the crazy flame user on their team, to which Kun tells him that they need Quatro's skills. Plus, they're going to need Quatro if they also want to summon Chang later on. Their conversation makes Wanyan fail to notice that their enemy spearheads Tibo and Rebo have also arrived inside the cave. Hyungchung, Tibo, and Rebo, who belong to Team We Are the One, inform Kun that they knew he was planning on summoning a teammate right away, since he bought Wanyan, the cheapest unit available in the game. Kun then rushes Wanyan to summon Quatro before Tibo and Rebo make their move. So he calls for his name on the pond, and a loading icon appears above it. The icon beeps and takes its time to call Quatro. It's only then that R7 reveals that it takes 5 minutes to call a teammate and summon them because, according to the robot, every game in the world has some loading time. With that information, Wanyan turns to Tibo and Rebo as he braces himself for a fight. Back in the north, Pandit and Groban bombard Horyang and Kasana with Shinsu Blast from their perch. However, Horyang notices that they're not attacking at full strength. It's almost like they're just biding their time. Horyang then wonders why Viol decided to face Mad Dog alone. Meanwhile, we find Bomb rushing up a stairway. It's revealed that he isn't on his way to Verigarv right now, as we find out in the flashback that Beta told him exactly how he can steal the original needle. Beta even told him that 3 of the gamblers are under Fug's control and that they're going to eliminate all of Bomb's friends while he's busy fighting Verigarv. Plus, Beta revealed that Fug also sent other rankers to keep an eye on Bomb, so there's no way he can get off the Archimedes. Having said that, Beta then urged Bomb that the only way to get through this predicament is by stealing the original needle. He then handed Bomb a glowing red tube and told him that it's the other key to get to the needle's location, something he stole from the Acorn Workshop. Beta then told Bomb that he'll meet with him at the needle's location while the game is going on. And from there, Beta promised that Bomb would learn the truth about the workshop battle and how he could reunite with his teammates. In the present, Bomb reaches a door on the side of a rock wall containing the same symbol that Hatz saw deep within the Acorn Workshop's secret underground lair. Meanwhile, Reflejo makes his way to Bomb. However, he finds Novik guarding the stairway that Bomb climbed earlier. Novik asks Reflejo why he's there and tells the Fug fisherman that this is a no-passing zone. And at that moment, Reflejo realizes that both Bomb and Novik have joined hands with the Mad Dog. We then go to a flashback set last night and see Anak talking to May. The Lizard Princess asks her friend for a favor, to secretly meet Novik before the tournament starts tomorrow. According to Anak, if her guess is right, then there won't be any reason for Team Mad Dog to go against Viol. Fast forward to earlier today, and we discover that Bomb had already told Novik his plans to steal the real needle. He thinks the idea isn't bad, but Novik wonders if he can avoid both Team Fug or Team Mad Dog's surveillance. Suddenly, May walks up to him and does the favor that Anak asked her the previous night. May tells Novik that if Viol is planning to return to where he was, the Mad Dog can help them for a little while. In the present, we see that Novik and Reflejo are now in the middle of a heated duel. The Fug fisherman uses his scythe to swipe and hack at Novik, but he's able to avoid getting hit. All the while, Novik informs Reflejo that Fug has been checkmated, considering Viol has already decided to leave their criminal organization. According to Novik, there's absolutely no way that Fug can win now, since Viol will be going back to his old teammates after all this, and he'll have the real needle that Reflejo's organization has been desperately trying to get their hands on. Reflejo then slashes Novik with his weapon, but he just blocks it with his arms before telling that Viol has probably already taken the real needle by now. Hearing this, Reflejo chastises Novik for being so arrogant and tells him that they don't even know what Viol is going to find when he reaches the real needle. At the same time, a black shadow with red eyes appears behind Reflejo. Back in the south, the loading icon on the Pond of Calling is only halfway through. Wanyan panics now that T-Bo and Rebo are gearing up to take him out of the game. Kun tells his teammate that there's no other choice but to buy some time while they wait for Quaitro to arrive. So Kun tells Wanyan to make a run for it. T-Bo and Rebo immediately blast Wanyan with a wave of Shinsu, and he has no other choice but to do his best to not get hit with the devastating blast. Kun realizes this and analyzes the minuscule monsters to discover their weakness. A second later, Kun tells Wanyan something absolutely crazy. Instead of running away, he orders his teammate to run toward T-Bo and Rebo. Wanyan is against this, but he ultimately puts his trust in Kun and does as he's told. When Wanyan gets close enough to the two monsters, Kun tells him to jump to the side just as T-Bo and Rebo are about to unleash their Shinsu blast. Wanyan literally does a leap of faith and the Shinsu wave barely misses him. But both he and Kun also notice that neither of the monsters can see them even if Wanyan is just right beside T-Bo. Kun then tells Wanyan that he's confirmed their enemy's weakness. He realizes that T-Bo and Rebo belong to a tribe in the tower that splits their bodies into two to increase their chances of survival. However, there's a price for this technique. Namely, they get a huge blind spot when they split their bodies into two. According to Kun, the left side of the yellow creature and the right side of the blue creature constitute T-Bo and Rebo's real body. The respective other halves of their body are fakes that can't use Shinsu and have slow reaction time. They're blind spots. At this moment, Wanyan instantly gets the plan to defeat their opponent. So he dodges another blast, circles behind T-Bo and Rebo, and knocks each of them out with solid punches. With both creatures out of commission, the host announces that Kun's team has defeated their designated enemy spearhead, so they can now move to the semifinals of the Growth Tournament. Even better, they acquire 500,000 points from defeating their opponent. At this point, the Pond of Calling's loading screen finally finishes and sends Quaitro Blitz to the arena. The Pyromaniac regular looks for someone to burn, but he gets disappointed when Wanyan tells him that this round's over now. Wanyan then asks if they should summon more teammates now that they're 500,000 points richer. Kun agrees and chooses to add Arkraptor, Yiwa, and Rak to their roster. All in all, they cost 370,000 points, so Kun's team still has 130,000 more to spare for the next round of the game. Rak asks Kun if he knows what's going on with Bomb's team over in the north, so Kun tells them all to go to the waiting area to see the live feed of their duel with Team Mad Dog. Somewhere else in the north, we find out that Bomb has successfully located the real needle. And as promised, Beta's there to meet him and tell Bomb the weapon's name, the needle to kill the king. Beta then explains that this needle is pretty much legendary. According to him, an irregular named Enryo used it a long time ago to kill an administrator, a creature thought to be immortal within the tower. Beta doesn't know the exact details about how Fug got their hands on it, but what he knows is that the organization believes that this same weapon can kill Jihad. Fug has one problem though, the needle is dead, its power is all spent. Finding this out, Fug decided to collaborate with the workshop to find a way to revive the real needle's power. And that was when the workshop started kidnapping kids from the middle area to experiment on. This is the point where Beta reveals that the workshop's living ignition weapon experiments are being done in order to unlock the powers of the real needle. While this is happening, we discover that Reflejo has told Novik the same thing. He tells Novik that Fug finally has the last material they need to activate the weapon, referring to Viol, and that the organization has been planning this for longer than he can imagine. Reflejo then reveals that he wasn't just sent there to keep an eye on Viol. His true task is to retrieve the completed weapon to his master once it's done. Suddenly, Violga and Redong approach Novik from behind, and Novik realizes that they're working with Fug as well. Back at Bomb, Beta continues to tell him about the weapon's story. It turns out that human experimentation is actually prohibited in the tower. Still, the workshop didn't care and proceeded to do it until they succeeded in creating living ignition weapons. Throughout their research, the researchers at the workshop discovered that they needed the devil to ignite the real needle, and that devil is hiding inside Bomb. Even Beta admits that he doesn't exactly know what's inside Bomb, only that it's a power that's rumored to be able to rival that of a god's. Beta then reveals that Viol has been the target of the workshop all along, to put the power of Needle inside him. However, some Fug Slayers objected to this plan, since they think that it's a bad idea to give so much power to a rookie Slayer nominee like Bomb. So, this fringe group of Fug Slayers came up with a different plan, to do the opposite and inject Bomb's soul into the needle so that they can use it themselves. Just as he finishes his story, Beta reveals his true colors and attacks Bomb. Outside, Novik finds out that even both May and Verigarv are Fug members, with that whole story about the Mad Dog hating the organization actually being just a lie. In fact, she's been spying on Bomb's friends like a knack just to keep an eye on Bomb. She then orders Violka and Rydog to kill Novik, but a blast of blue Shinso blows away the two Fug agents before they can lay their hands on Novik. He's pleasantly surprised to see Horyang when he turns around to see where the Shinsu wave came from. He then tells the big guy to make a run for it, just as May was about to hit them with another blast from her lighthouse. The dust settles and both Novik and Horyang make it out of there. May asks Reflejo if they should go after them, but the Fug fisherman tells her to just let them go. They can't do anything to stop them anymore after all. Novik then tells Horyang about Fug's plans while they run away from May and the others. The two men suddenly run into Yuto, so they stop in their tracks. Novik asks Yuto if she's there to stop them, but the two men are surprised when they find out that she's on their side. Yuto then tells them that she'll show them the way, because there's still something that they need to do. Inside the Needle's lair, Beta has just driven his entire fist into Bomb's chest, as he tells him how long he's been waiting for this moment. Beta then berates Bomb for even trying to steal the needle just so he could be with his old friends, and the boy reveals that he blames him for what the workshop is doing to the real Emily. Beta tells Bomb that he's going to make him suffer, that he's going to kill all his friends to teach him the pain of losing a loved one. And at that moment, Beta pushes Bomb off the cliff, separating them from the needle. Back in the south, Team Sweet and Sour notices that the Archimedes is moving in the sky. Io then makes the announcement that the tournament in the north has been concluded, with Team Fug winning the game after Team Mad Dog conceded victory to them. Io then gets the rest of the contestants up to speed that 4 members of Team Fug, including Juvio Grace, have left the team. What's more is that May and Verigarv have decided to take their talents to Team Fug to fill the spots that Viol and the others left. Somewhere else, the man we saw at the beginning of the workshop battle, the one talking to someone via an old radio, has another conversation with his acquaintance. He chastises the person on the other end of the radio for pretending not to know about the workshop battle's real goal. Then, the voice on the radio says that they did as the man requested. They've taken their hands off the workshop battle. They then ask the man what his plan is now, and he replies that he's just going to keep watching and see how Bomb will overcome this hardship. However, he admits that it would be nice to see the power of the real needle in the hands of an irregular. We then catch up with Team Shibisu and find out that Vespa has single-handedly won the game for them, and with a sleeping Lori on her back to boot. Much like Team Sweet and Sour, they also hear the news about Team Fug's victory and Viol's departure. Right after that, Vespa sees someone coming out of the forest and finds out that it's Hats. He tells his teammates that they have to stop the workshop from making the worst weapon. Shibisu and Vespa try to calm him down, but they immediately become attentive when Hats mentions that Bomb is in danger. Meanwhile, Rack and his group try to find answers about why Bomb would leave Team Fug. Kun tells him that the best move right now is to head to the waiting area to find out more information about it. Soon, Team Sweet and Sour arrive at the accommodations where a robot named R9 shows them to their rooms. Kun, however, heads to the viewing room within the building to watch the recording of Team Fug and Team Mad Dog's contest. The rest of the team head to their rooms and come across Masha, Paul Beckrone, and one more E-rank regular. Wanyan, Arkraptor, and Rack overhear it when Masha and Paul mention that someone called Snake will give them money if they make it to the finals. They then chat about how much they hate Viol, but Wanyan and his team just let it slide. In the meantime, Kun watches the tape from Team Fug versus Team Mad Dog and wonders where Bomb and Novik went off to right at the start of the game. He's so focused on the recording that he fails to notice Mia, one of the gamblers, sneak up behind him. Mia then calls him by his real name, Kun Aguero Agnes. Kun asks how she found out about his true identity, and Mia answers that she's one of the gamblers working with Fug. Mia then goes on to tell Kun that Fug basically set them all up, from hiring hunters like her to kill them to getting Team Mad Dog to compete in the same event. It's a grand old conspiracy. Before leaving, Mia tells Kun that he shouldn't hide his identity anymore, since Bomb will fall into an eternal slumber soon enough. Mia then exits the room, leaving Kun to stew in his thoughts about what's going on. Kun only gets back to his senses when an angry Shibisu barges into the viewing room. Back in the north, Horyang, Novik, and Yuto are scouting the temple where the real needle is hidden. Yuto tells them that Viol's somewhere inside the mountain. Novik asks her why she betrayed Fug, and Yuto tells him about the rift going on in the organization. Those who masterminded this trap are the same Slayers and Elders who don't want Bomb to gain the power of the real needle and instead take its power for themselves. She then reveals their plan to literally dissolve Bomb in the needle, which causes Horyang and Novik to pause. Somewhere else, Beta is reminiscing about his horrible childhood when Kasano walks up to him and asks if he locked Viol inside the mountain. We then find out that it was Kasano who originally drafted Beta to help Fug with trapping Viol and dealing with his teammates. However, Beta isn't doing it for the organization. Beta is pretty much using Fug so he can get his hands on Viol and make him feel the same pain that he feels. And with that, Beta declares that he's going to kill all of Bomb's friends. Bomb regains consciousness and finds himself at the bottom of the pit where Beta pushed him. To make matters worse, he's bound in tentacle-like restraints. Bomb sees the real needle and discovers that it's not driven into the ground, it's actually suspended in midair over a pond, with a glowing red dot between them. Bomb takes a second to stare at the weapon, which makes him realize how awe-inspiring it is. He tries to free himself from his restraints and finds out that he can't use his Shinsu. He then notices that the tentacle wrapped around him is the same thing keeping him from using his powers. Bomb notices that the tentacle extends into the pond and realizes that it's absorbing his Shinsu whenever he tries to activate it. He then hears Reflejo, who tells him that he and the rest of the Fug Fringe group who are against Viol will turn him into a weapon and infuse him with the real needle. Reflejo then reveals that the jar-shaped attachment on the Archimedes' tail contains a solution that will literally melt anything it touches. As such, Bomb will dissolve into the real needle, which will then activate the devastating weapon. After that, the anti-Viol Fug members will be able to freely decide who they want to give the real needle to, because to this Fringe group, allowing someone like Bomb to possess a weapon like the real needle, someone they can't fully control, would only prove problematic. Reflejo leaves, and Bomb thinks of a plan to escape captivity when he reminds himself of all his friends. Back inside the viewing room at the Growth Tournament's waiting area, we find out that Shibisu is mad at Kun for not telling him that he's still alive. Then Hats arrives and he gets Kun up to speed about Bomb shortly after the reunion. Meanwhile, Wanyan, Arcraptor, and Rak rush to Yua's help when she starts screaming and running out of her room. They ask her what's the matter, and she tells them there's a giant bug on her bed. We find out that it's Vespa, who actually was assigned as Yua's roommate. In the meantime, Hats reveals to his friends that Ro's mission was to keep an eye on Viol for the new association he's working with. Hats then reveals that Ro ultimately found himself investigating Emily, and we get explicit proof that the real Emily is actually a human being and not an android at this point. The swordsman then continues to debrief his old friends that the workshop and Fug have been working together to achieve a specific purpose, and that everyone like Kasano, Horyang, Emily, and Beta are just some of the successful victims of their research. Hats tells his teammates about the workshop's ultimate plan. It turns out that they weren't just successful in finding a way to turn humans into living ignition weapons, they've also managed to discover how to melt those same humans that become living ignition weapons and infuse them back into those powerful weapons. Ultimately, Hats tells Kun that the workshop is planning on doing this to Bomb using the melting solution on the Archimedes' tail. All the while, Wanyan and the rest of Team Sweet and Sour try to shoo away Vespa, but their shenanigans are cut short when Kun arrives to tell everyone that they need to have an emergency meeting. Shortly after, everyone gets up to speed about Bomb's situation, and they couldn't believe the lengths that the workshop and Fug would go just to get their weapon. Rak then shakes down Hats about not telling them about it sooner. We then get the reveal that it was Hats dressed up as a workshop guard who confronted Beta earlier, as he apologizes to the team for not being able to stop Fug's plans. Later, Kun and Shibisu freshen up in the restroom and realize that both Fug and the workshop invited them to the event just so that they can be used as leverage against Bomb. Shibisu also asks Kun why Hats and Lero Ro didn't tell them what they had found out sooner. In reply to this, Kun tells his old friend that if they did, the rest of them might have acted hastily and put everyone, including themselves, in much more danger. Outside the restroom, Rak tells Kun that he's going to head out this instant to get back Bomb from Fug's clutches. Kun then steps out of the restroom and tells him he's going as well. Then Kun announces to everyone that he's come up with a plan. He asks Hats how long the Archimedes would need to reach Bomb's location, and the swordsman informs him that it's going to take a couple of hours. At that point, Kun lets everyone know that they're going to save Bomb and stay in the Growth Tournament at the same time. And the first part of his plan? To summon Bomb in the games. We then move on to see what's happening inside the Archimedes and find out that the scores upon scores of the intruders who infiltrated the ship have escaped their cells. They cause a riot in the hallways of the cruiser, which causes a panic among the Archimedes guards. The Archimedes staff try to discover how the intruders escaped, and one of them reports that the Shinsu barrier system in the ship has been tampered with. In a corner nearby, we see Ro, currently disguised as a workshop guard, was the one responsible for taking down the jail's barriers. Someone speaks to him through his radio and asks if the riot will give them enough time to do what they have to do. Ro tells him that everything's going according to plan, since he sent Hats to go and meet with his old teammates. Meanwhile, Madarako gets a report from one of his lackeys that their operation will be delayed due to the escaped prisoners. The high ranker hears this and remarks that they have rats on board the Archimedes. Still, Madarako tells this man to just leave them be until the end of the tournament, as he thinks to himself that Kun and his friends won't be enough to stop his plans. We then see a glimpse of the traveler trying to find his way within the Archimedes halls, as the other escaped prisoners cause a riot within the ship. Back in the southern portion of the water stadium, Iowa announces the start of the Growth Tournament semi-finals. There are 4 teams that'll be competing this time around, and whichever 2 that beats their designated targets will then have to fight against each other for the spot on the finals against Team Fug. Team Shibisu and Team Sweet and Sour get ready to start the game. In the meantime, Shibisu, Hats, and Kun communicate with each other via Lighthouse. Hats asks Kun if their plan would work, to which he replies that this is the only move they can play right now without breaking the rules. It's then revealed that Kun debriefed everyone at the viewing room earlier, where he told them that it's far riskier if they tried to rescue Bomb and break the game's rules. It would send Fug's agents down on them. Hatz then adds that Ro knows about their plan too, and that the former examiner will deal with the consequences once they summon Bomb to the growth tournament. Kun also reveals that Horyang, Novik, and Yuto were also looking for Bomb. Wanyan asks him how he knew about this, and Kun tells him that he checked the Emily app. But more interestingly, Kun is able to find out that Emily knows this is because one of the renegades from Team Fug have been feeding the app with this information. Kun thinks that whoever is uploading all of this into Emily must be on Bomb's side. In the present, Shibisu asks Kun if they can really trust whoever is feeding the app information, to which Kun says that they have no other choice. They have to trust whoever this mystery renegade is. Somewhere else, Yuto, Novik, and Horyang are gathered in the middle of a forest north of the island. Horyang asks Yuto if her friends can figure out their plan, referring to Kun, and Yuto tells him that he will because he's an outstanding regular. Back in the south, Kun reiterates their plan to save Bomb. Their ultimate goal is to summon their friend. To do that, Wanyan and Quaitro will make their way to the calling center to summon Bomb when he becomes available. At the same time, Iwa and Rak are tasked with taking down whoever gets in Wanyan and Quaitro's path. On the other hand, Arkraptor is assigned with the task of hiding and scouting the area before attacking the enemy at a crucial moment. As for the members of Team Shibisu, Kun assigns him to basically hunt the members of the opposing teams and take them down to make sure that any potential threats to summoning Bomb to the field will be removed. Shibisu gets excited and tells Kun that this reminds him of their old team, but Kun tells him to hold his horses. The old team will only be complete once Bomb comes back to them. The game starts, and it doesn't take long for Wanyan, Quaitro, and Yiwa and Rak to run into their enemies. In this case, E-rank regulars Masha and Paul Beckron have blocked their path. Team Sweet and Sour sticks to the plan, as Rak orders Wanyan to head to the calling center while he and Yiwa deal with their enemies. Masha tries to chase Wanyan and Quaitro, but Rak successfully diverts the regulars' attention away from the two. Rak and Yiwa then size up their opponents and choose their matchups. Rak takes on Masha and rushes in for a punch, which his enemy blocks using his super sturdy umbrella. Masha then counters with a strike and it sends Rak flying. Yiwa, on the other hand, charges up her flames and hurls a huge fireball at Belkron. However, she's shocked to discover that Belkron has the ability to literally eat fire, which makes him the worst match for her. At that moment, Masha dashes behind Yiwa and sucker punches her. He then holds Yiwa hostage and gets all creepy with the young girl, telling her that he's going to let her live if she joins their group. Yiwa of course refuses, and Masha just becomes more sinister when he tells Yiwa that he's going to do things to her. Yiwa falls silent and Masha notices that she's looking at something behind the creepy regular. When Masha turns, he finds that Rak is fully recovered from the hit he just took and is even transformed to his original form. Then Rak wastes no time and hits him with a cracking punch that rips apart Masha's umbrella. The impact of Rak's punch is so loud that even Wanyan and Quaitro stop in their tracks to see where the sound is coming from, but Kun tells them to focus up and keep their head in the game. Somewhere in the distance, Beta also notices the explosion. He then teleports to a different part of the island to meet with another gambler working for Fug, Devil Bond, who stares at the boy with his crazy eyes. Beta then tells Devil Bond to hand him what was promised, and the gambler gives him a worm in a jar. It turns out this worm is a parasitic regular in Team Devil Bond's spearhead called Medina, with the ability to get inside people's brains to control their bodies. Beta plans on swallowing Medina so that the organizers will detect him as a participant in the games. Devil Bond warns Beta that Medina might try to take over his body, but Beta horks down the worm without a care in the world. He then leaves the crazy-eyed gambler without even saying thank you. Meanwhile, Masha has realized that Rak is a compression license holder, someone that the administrators have given the power to change sizes in the tower. Rak then checks up on Yiwa before facing both Masha and Belkron by himself. The crocodile warrior fends off his enemy's joint attack, but they manage to get a couple of good shots in. He then turns to Yiwa and tells her that they're going to attack in tandem. Yiwa is hesitant, knowing that Belkron will just eat up her flames, but Rak tells her to trust the process. So Yiwa does as she's told and charges up some hot fire. Belkron sees this and thinks she's being stupid. Suddenly, Rak grabs Belkron by the throat and chokes him out. And in a truly gangster moment, Rak whispers to Belkron and asks him if he can still swallow Yiwa's flames with a blocked throat. Yiwa then launches a wave of fire that burns Belkron to a crisp. The attack also catches Rak's arm, but he just brushes it off now that he's an absolute tank. Seeing his teammate become toast, Masha tries to sucker punch Rak, but the crocodile gives him a death glare that causes him to freeze in place. And in the blink of an eye, Rak knocks out the regular. Suddenly, Beta appears behind and asks Rak if he's one of Yul's friends. While all this is happening, we find out that Horyang, Novik, and Yuto have reached an abandoned calling center somewhere on the island. Yuto informs Novik and Horyang that this abandoned summoning area was formerly used for the workshop's experiments. However, they failed to notice that the summoning wells within this place are still operational when they abandon the place. Yuto tells them that they can use the well to transport themselves where Team Fug is keeping Viol without being detected. Novik then asks Yuto how she knows all about this and the fact that Kun is alive, to which she replies that they'll find out soon enough. Yudo then debriefs her two companions and tells them that she'll provide the distraction while Novik and Hwoarang head for Viol. Yudo then asks them if they really want to do this, since this mission is going to be extremely dangerous. Hwoarang says they wouldn't be able to face his old teammates if he doesn't rescue Bomb, and Novik shares the same sentiment. With that, the three start to put their plan into motion. In the meantime, everyone, from the participants to the hosts, is surprised to see Beta as a registered spearhead in the contest. The boy then asks Rack and Yiwa if they're Viol's friends again. Yiwa denies this and tells Beta that there's no way in hell that a noblewoman like her would be friends with a Fug member, while Rack tells him that Viol is actually his prey. Beta hears this and chastises Devilbond through his observer about failing to locate Viol's friends for him. Devilbond then points Beta to a couple of signals headed for the nearby calling center, referring to Wanyan and Quatro. The boy then teleports away and leaves both Rack and Yiwa. With him gone, Shibisu berates Rack for letting Beta go, as he tells the crocodile that the boy was the one responsible for trapping Bomb. Meanwhile, Wanyan literally drags Quatro along with him on the way to the calling center. It turns out Quatro has become so bored with the current game that he stopped moving. Suddenly, a red-skinned enemy Regor jumps out of the forest to attack them. They dodge his attack and face the enemy. However, Quatro gets the pep back in his step when he realizes that he now has someone to set on fire. So, he tells Wanyan to keep heading for the calling center while he deals with his challenger. Hey, Quatro even mentions that he doesn't really care about Viol, but he likes Wanyan, before telling his teammate to go ahead without him. Wanyan then leaves Quatro to it. While this is happening, Kun realizes that Wanyan has got some natural charisma and leadership skills, which makes him a great spearhead for the team, before admitting that Bomb made a good choice being friends with the guy. At the same time, Beta tells Devilbond that they'll go after Wanyan, but Vespa suddenly appears from out of nowhere and attacks the boy. Beta barely dodges her initial strike as Vespa gloats about her speed. He then asks Vespa if she's a friend of Viol's, to which she says that Viol's the jerk who stole her honey. So no, they are not friends. Hearing that, Beta tells her that they're on the same side. Vespa realizes that maybe they are, but Shibisu scolds her to stay on track. Vespa then tells Beta that she can't team up with him because she thinks they're enemies. The two then square up as Beta challenges her to see who's the fastest regular around. Vespa, of course, tells him that no one can match her speed. But she's immediately proven wrong when they clash and Beta activates his partial ignition called Dionysus, which leaves Vespa in the dust. Beta almost catches her with a supersonic spinning heel kick, but Rack catches up to them and blocks the attack with a spear. Rack instantly notices the boy's strength, while Beta is surprised that Rack and Yiwa are fighting him now. But Rack admits that he lied and even tells Beta that Yiwa is Viol's wife. At that moment, Beta analyzes the playing field and correctly guesses that his enemies are planning on summoning Bomb via the calling center. Back inside the Team Fug's base, Hwoarang and Novik scope out the room where Bomb is being held, while Pandit and Groban guard its entrance. The two men then get a signal for them to go into the room, so Novik and Hwoarang come out of hiding and approach their enemies. We then catch up with Bomb and discover that he's pretty exhausted after struggling his way to get out of his restraints. Still, the tentacle is wrapped tightly around him as Bomb tries his hardest to come up with a way to help his friends. In fact, the whole experience reminds him of his youth, back when he was stuck inside that cave just waiting for Rachel to return. And now, the desperation has made him reach a point where he's willing to spill blood to get out of captivity. Meanwhile, Reflejo sits on a throne somewhere inside their base. He wonders if there's something wrong going on with their operation and, more importantly, thinks if Yuto actually betrayed them. He then gets a call from Yuto asking him to meet, and they come face to face right after that. Reflejo asks her what she's up to and tells her that there's no use betraying their group. He then asks her why she's decided to betray their team, and Yuto simply answers that Reflejo and their fringe group's plans will ultimately fail. Reflejo thinks that's ridiculous, since he believes that everything is already set for them to melt Bomb and infuse him with the real needle. According to him, they're just waiting for the Archimedes to arrive and pour that piping hot solution over Bomb. Reflejo then reveals that he's directly working for the Fug Slayer Karaka. Yuto hears this and can't believe that a relative newbie slayer like Karaka would have the gall to plot such a scheme. At that moment, Yuto reveals herself to be none other than Hwoarang. It turns out that the real Yuto's mission was to simply get chosen by the elders to participate in this mission. Afterwards, Hwoarang changed places with her, and now here they are. Hwoarang then reveals that their group knew that Reflejo's fringe group within Fug were lying when they made the wager with Jinsung's group. So they went along with it, and Hwoarang even gathered friends to help Viol in the workshop battle. Hwoarang then informs Reflejo that the fake needle that they put inside Bomb wasn't just a decoy that would allow him to acclimate himself to the real one. It's actually a container meant to house the real needle. As such, the real needle would have instantly reacted to Bomb the moment Reflejo and the others trapped him in the same room as the weapon. In fact, it will have already infused itself with the boy at this moment. With their plans ruined, Reflejo tells Mei to kill Hwoarang, but the red-headed guy just jumps off a cliff and escapes. Reflejo gets desperate and makes the order to call in Team Mad Dog to deal with their enemies. We then find out that Novik and Hworyung have already defeated Groban and Pandit. They wonder why Team Fug would station a couple of scrubs to guard an important asset like Bomb, but they immediately find out that those two weaklings were just the appetizer. The true guardian of the place is a level 85 Patrol Blue Titan. The gigantic robot stands in front of the real door that's holding Bomb captive, so Hworyung tells Novik that he'll deal with the Blue Titan while he opens the door. They then get down to business as Hworyung activates his powers to throw down with the giant robot. Meanwhile, Novik runs up to the door and sees that there's a keyhole right at its center, but he also knows that Viol has the key to it. Hworyung tells him to hurry up as the big guy struggles against the Blue Titan, so Novik tries taking down the door, but it doesn't even budge. Out of options, Novik then sticks his finger inside the keyhole and, to his surprise, it opens with a click. He then suddenly hears a voice telling him to move, and suddenly a blue Shinsu blast hits the Blue Titan. The patrol robot becomes immobilized, and we see that it was Bomb behind the powerful Shinsu attack. Outside, Rak, Yiwa, and Vespa are squaring up against Beta. At this moment, even Io notices that this new spearhead that appeared in the game is one of the workshop's living ignition weapons. Io even wonders how Beta is still even alive, as he's well aware that the disposal order for the kid has already been given. Back on the ground, Beta tells his opponents that there's no way they can free Viol from captivity since he trapped Bomb there himself. The boy then charges up a couple of powerful bangs and shoots Rak with them. Shibisu immediately instructs Rak to compress and become smaller to dodge Beta's blasts. The maneuver works, and Rak wastes no time to return to his original form in mid-air to counter Beta's salvo with a spear throw. All the while, he screams at Beta that Bomb is going to come back to them. Beta then parries Rak's spear and tells him that he's not going to let Bomb become happy as revenge for all the countless people who were sacrificed just to create a living weapon like him. According to Beta, Bomb will be a complete weapon soon. He'll make him feel the same kind of despair he feels. Yiwa then tells the boy to shut up with all this talk of despair as she attempts to burn him with her trademark flame powers. But Beta remains unscathed when the flames die down and tells Yiwa that she doesn't know anything for someone who talks a lot. And for that, the boy tells Yiwa that he's going to kill her first. Suddenly, Beta receives a call from Devil Bond to tell him that Bomb has escaped from captivity. The boy can't believe what he's hearing. But Devil Bond makes the news extra bad when he informs him that Bomb has even managed to steal the real needle. So, Beta chooses to drop his fight with Rak, Yiwa, and Vespa as he forms wings on his back and hastily flies away to Bomb's location. Back inside Team Fug's base, Novik notices that there's a rod wrapped in bandages floating beside Bomb. Bomb's not exactly sure what it is, but he thinks it's the real needle. At that moment, Hworyung walks in on them and tells Bomb that the real needle might not look like much right now, but that's only because it's currently sealed within its container. In truth, nobody knows the kind of power it has once it shows its real form. However, Hworyung admits that even she isn't sure if Bomb will be able to handle the weapon's full power once it's released. Bomb then asks her how she got there, and Hworyung gets him up to speed about how she replaced the real Yuto to spawn Reflejo and the others, and ultimately fulfill their plan of infusing the real needle with Bomb. And now that Bomb has finally done it, Hworyung tells him that he's now become a man worthy to be her god. But as always, Bomb tells her that he's not interested in being their god, and Hworyung correctly surmises that he's going back to his friends. Bomb pauses for a moment, thinking that she's going to stop him, but he's surprised when Hworyung tells him that she's going to show him the way. She correctly speculates that Bomb's friends should be near the calling center right now. Bomb asks her why she's doing this, and she simply tells him that it's the condition, and that she'll explain everything later because their enemies are on the move. But before they leave, Hworyung warns Bomb that the people after them will be some of the strongest that Bomb will have to face up until now. Going back to his friends might also mean putting them in danger. Plus, returning to them would be meaningless if they don't win the tournament. So she asks him again if he really wants to return to his friends. Bomb, on the other hand, is resolute. So he tells her he's made up his mind because he belongs with the people he cares about. According to him, things might get difficult. He's willing to ride or die with his buddies. Meanwhile, Wanyan celebrates after finally making it to the call center. But Kun tells him not to get too excited because their job isn't done yet. Kun then thinks about Yuto and how she's able to always be one step ahead of their enemies. This mystery makes Kun wonder who Yuto really is. At that moment, Arkraptor gives him a report that he's traced Mia to the calling center. Kun then gives the order for all his friends to turn off any of their devices that can be traced in order to make sure that Bomb's escape and their future route are kept among themselves. Inside the Fug lair, Hworyung reiterates their plan to her new teammates, which is to make sure that the others get to summon him at all costs before they proceed to join up with the rest of their friends. Hworyung stresses that they're not there for a fight because their main priority should be to make it out of there. Everyone agrees and they head out, but they then encounter Mei and the mad dog Veragarv along the way. Novik notices that there's an entire pack of black dogs surrounding Veragarv, and Hworyung tells him that they're creatures called Shadow Wolves, a special skill that mad dogs use to kill their enemy. Hworyung then informs them that Veragarv was bred for murder, so in no way should they engage him in a one-on-one fight. So the four of them instead make a run for it as the Shadow Wolves try to lunge at them. They fend off the Shadow Wolves, with Novik and Hwoarang hanging back to stop the pack while Hwoarang and Veal continue forward. In the middle of all this, Hwoarang tells Bomb to keep running no matter what. She knows his personality, that he'd make sure not to leave anyone behind, especially if it's for his sake. So Hwoarang promises that she's going to bring along Novik and Hwoarang when they get out of there, but Bomb should prioritize the summoning or else they'll all be doomed. Bomb puts his trust in Hwoarang and agrees. All of a sudden, 3 level 72 patrol iron crabs appear in front of them and block their path. Bomb manages to instantly destroy the large patrol robots by using a bit of the real Needle's unleashed power. May sees this, and it makes her realize that Bomb hasn't fully learned how to control a powerful weapon yet. So May comes up with the idea to steal back the real Needle before Bomb can even get the chance to master it. In the meantime, Vargarv has decided to directly engage Novik and Hwoarang. Bomb, of course, expresses about his friends at the moment, but Hwoarang reminds him to just get out of there and leave the rest to her, as she lunges forward to attack May and give Bomb enough time to make his escape. Hearing this, Bomb decides to follow Hwoarang's order and make a path by breaking May's barrier and her lighthouse along with it. May then fights Hwoarang, and the guide notices that May seems relaxed. That's because May knows that Bomb is headed for the well that's connected to the calling center, and Reflejo has already destroyed it to prevent him from escaping the lair. But, unknown to May, Hwoarang had already prepared for that. It's then revealed that Khun and Hwoarang had set up a way to summon Bomb at the item store near the calling center. Earlier, just right before Bomb, Hwoarang, and Novik headed out to make their escape, she debriefed him about how Bomb is currently being treated as both an item and human within the game. So, all he needed to do was head for the summoning well connected to the Ion's item store and mention the code F2D-426 to connect to the other side. In the present, we see Bomb do exactly that, which allows him to call Wanyan at the item store. While this is happening, Hwoarang notices that they've bought enough time, so she makes her escape along with Novik and Hwoarang. Back at the item store, Wanyan and Bomb are excited to reunite with each other. He even informs Bomb that Khun is right there. They then prepare to summon their old friend, but the plan hits a snag when Beta sneaks up behind Wanyan and drives his hand right through the boy's chest. Now, May has contacted Reflejo to report that Bomb and the rest of his friends have eluded their grasp. So, of course, this annoys the thug fisherman, who then receives more bad news when he finds out that Bomb's team is already trying to summon him at the item store. At the same time, we find a fully transformed Vespa transporting Rak, Yiwa, and Lori to meet with the rest of their friends. They spot Quaitro on the ground, who has just burned the hell out of the random regular who tried attacking him earlier. Rak asks the pyromaniac if he saw Beta pass by, and Quaitro points him to the right direction, the item store. Shibisu hears this along with Hats, and they're confused as to why the rest of their friends went there instead of the calling center. So Shibisu decides to split up the team, with Rak, Lori, and Yiwa going to the item store, while he goes over to the calling center with Vespa and Quaitro. Shibisu tells his friends to hurry, fearing that Beta might have made a move against them already. Unknown to Shibisu, Beta has already reached the item store and has just stabbed Wanyan in the back. Khun and Bomb can only scream for their friend's name when they see this. Khun asks Beta who he is and what he's even doing in the competition, and Beta tells him that he's technically a participant of the tournament. Also, he tells Khun to just wait because he'll get his turn soon enough. Bomb is absolutely livid and asks Beta why he did that, to which the boy says that he wants to make Bomb suffer by murdering each and every one of his allies like he promised. At that moment, Beta prepares to deliver Wanyan the killing blow, and Khun almost concedes the game to try and save Wanyan. But Rak and the others arrive just in time to stop Beta from driving his hand into Wanyan again. Rak then kicks Lori to wake him up. It works, and Lori then takes a good look at their opponent. He then asks the boy what kind of thing it was that he swallowed. Near the calling center, Arkraptor regroups with Vespa, Shibisu, and Quaitro. They decide to try and take out Mia to score more points in order to summon Bomb, so they head inside the cave. However, they get there and find out that Mia is nowhere to be found. We then find out that Reflejo has pulled out Mia from the game to prevent their enemies from defeating her and earning the points they need. Reflejo then receives a message from Kasano. In the meantime, Lori tells Khun and the rest of his team that there's a parasite inside Beta's brain, referring to Medina. He informs him that it's trying to take over Beta's mind, but it can't since Beta is originally many. Khun asks Lori if he can get the parasite out of Beta, but Lori's too lazy to do it. So he tells Rak to bite him, which ultimately makes Lori agree to Khun's request. And he doesn't even break a sweat trying to take out Medina from Beta's skull. All he had to do was focus his Shinsu on Beta's head, which forced Medina to get all rattled and Beta to vomit the worm out of his body. Khun then orders Rak to destroy the parasite, but Beta manages to pick up the worm before the crocodile could get to it. Beta tries to swallow Medina again so that he can stay in the game, but Yiwa comes in clutch and toasts the parasite with her flames. Not only does this prevent Beta from rejoining the competition, but it also earns their team 500,000 points for taking out an enemy spearhead. At that moment, Team Sweet and Sour acquires the credits they need in order to summon Bomb, so Wanyan crawls to the pool of calling and pushes through with their plan. The summoning process begins and Beta becomes slack-jawed when he notices that Bomb is on his way. Rak then takes the opportunity to rush in and rescue Wanyan. Outside, Io makes an announcement about what's happening in the game. He's forced to spin the competition's narrative so that it would seem that Beta was actually a surprise contestant instead of an intruder. Punk then arrives and tells his partner that crap is about to hit the fan here. In the meantime, Shibisu hears Io's announcement and it makes him realize that Kun and Beta are at the item store. So Shibisu adjusts their strategy and tells Vespa to summon in Dorsey while he, Quaitro, and Arkraptor go to Kun's location. Back there, Beta tells his enemies to stop being annoying and just give him back Wanyan so he can finish the job. Rak tells Beta that if he wants Wanyan, he should come and claim him. This enrages the living weapon, who then summons 3 powerful bangs and shoots Rak's group with it. At that moment, Kun tells Rak to hold on to Lori. Beta launches his bangs and gets a direct hit on their targets, but the dust settles and he sees Lori has protected everyone using a Shinsu barrier. Lori then tells Kun that Beta isn't really human anymore. The Shinsu he controls comes from something else. Lori guesses that the workshop put something inside Beta's body, which then turned him into what he is now, an honest-to-goodness monster. At that moment, Beta activates partial ignition Dionysos to summon gigantic feet. One is about to step on Rak and his group, while the other is directed at the summoning pool to prevent Bomb from being summoned. Kun orders his teammates to block the attack, or else Beta might end up destroying the whole item store. So Rak wastes no time to spring into action and stop one of the huge feet with his bare hands. At the same time, Lori uses Eurasia-style Shinsu control skill, Cry of Piercing Water, to slice off the other foot trying to destroy the summoning pool. Rak then hurls away the foot he blocked, as Iwa makes sure it won't be a threat anymore by burning it to cinders. At this moment, Kun wonders if they're done here, but Lori informs him that Beta is just getting started. The living ignition weapon then hits them with the classic line, "I didn't expect to have to use this," as he activates a technique called partial ignition Phobos to summon a large green creature made of Shinsu. Phobos then loads up a couple of gigantic bangs and gets ready to lay waste to the item store and everyone inside it. Kun realizes that Beta has gone absolutely insane, so he tells everyone to stop him at any cost. Lori says it's going to be difficult. Upon analyzing their predicament, Lori tells him that they only have 3 choices right now. They can either protect themselves, protect the well, or give up the game. And with 3 minutes still remaining before Bomb arrives, Kun and his team find themselves trapped between a rock and a hard place. Beta savors the moment and provokes Bomb again. However, Sophia and a squad of workshop guards arrive at the item store just before he can release his attack. Kun's a bit relieved with this turn of events, since it gives him a bit more time to wait out Bomb's arrival. Meanwhile, Sophia orders Beta to go back to the lab, but the boy tells her to shut her mouth and just watch the fruits of her labor, the weapon that she created. Beta then tells her that Emily told him everything, particularly about how his becoming a living ignition weapon was all for revenge. And with that, Beta declares that he's going to end Jovial Grace's life, since he blames him for everything bad that's happened in his life. Kun then thinks on his feet and turns on his lighthouse. He then gives Shibisu a call to tell him to concede the game right now in order to bypass the waiting period for Bomb's summoning and allow him to arrive at the item store instantly. Under tons of pressure from Beta's impending rampage, Kun tells his friend to hurry. At that moment, Shibisu makes his move to quit the game and help the rest of his companions. At the same time, Beta has just launched a giant Shinsu wave inside the item store, which causes the entire building to crumble. Shibisu, Arkraptor, and Quaitro see the item store getting demolished from a distance, and Shibisu wonders if he didn't quit the game in time. Suddenly, a sky beam drops down from the sky and right on the spot where the item store used to be. They all know what time it is and who just arrived, as Bomb emerges inside the ruins of the item store to face Beta. Bomb tells Rak to take Wanyan somewhere safe while he deals with Beta. The crocodile then asks Bomb if he plans on leaving them again, and he tells his old friend that he's here to stay. Reassured, Rak then whisks Wanyan away. In the meantime, Sophia recognizes Bomb, while Kun checks his lighthouse to find that it's been damaged from Beta's previous Shinsu blast. In the middle of their face-off, Bomb asks Beta why he's going after his friends. And as he's been saying this whole time, Beta replies by telling Bomb it's all because he hates him. Beta then tells Bomb that the time for idle chat is over, so Bomb obliges and they get ready to rumble. Beta opens their fight by rushing toward Bomb at supersonic speed to give him a flying knee. Bomb blocks Beta's opening salvo as he remotely shoots his opponent with a bang from behind. Beta's got good fight instincts though, so he goes for some wrist control to avoid the hit and transitions to a flying heel kick that Bomb manages to block with his arm. Beta then tells Bomb that he's not impressed with his performance, as he sends him flying with a Shinsu charged strike. Iwa and Kun come to Bomb's rescue, telling Beta to get his butt back home now that the game is over. Kun then says that Beta already ruined their long-awaited reunion with Bomb and he's going to get ticked off if Beta keeps messing with them. The boy then tells Bomb how lucky he is to have friends who protect him even after putting their lives in danger. He then reveals that he lost everything because of Bomb as he begins to recount his past. It turns out that his final test to become a living ignition weapon was to kill all the other kids who survived the workshop's experiments. Back then, the researchers told him that whoever was the last kid standing would gain freedom too. But Beta soon discovered that it was all a lie, because his body was forced to rely on the workshop's drugs after they turned him into a living ignition weapon, which basically still trapped him within their grasp. We then find out that Beta is just pretty much jealous that Bomb has everything that he's always wanted. Bomb notices that Beta is gearing up for another Shinsu blast at this point, so he tells Kun to keep Yua safe. Bomb and Beta clash again, and Bomb notices that he has to perform a single piercing attack similar to Lori's in order to break through Beta's defenses. So he uses Han Sung-Yu style Shinsu control skill, straight line long pierce, to drive a hole into Beta's Phobos while he rushes to give the boy a punch. Beta sees Bomb approaching, so he goes for another partial ignition Dionysos to stomp his enemy. But the gigantic foot only lands on the blue platform, as Kun intervenes and uses his lighthouse to shield Bomb from the hit. At close range, Bomb asks Beta why he's blaming him for all the crap he's been through, even if Beta already knows that it's not his fault. Beta continues to be petulant, so he smacks Bomb with Shinsu charged energy. However, Bomb is able to parry Beta before he could fully land his power slap. They then get into a clinch battle as the combatants jockey for position and dominance over each other. All the while, Bomb reasons with Beta and tells him that he's not a part of the experiments. It was organized by Fug Slayers and the workshop. According to Bomb, Beta himself knows that the real enemy is someone else. Beta lashes out, refusing to believe Bomb's words as he cocks up his fist for another punch. But Bomb has his game checked at this point. He pulls back, bobs, and rises to counter Beta with a punch that connects right to the boy's chest. With Beta on the ropes, Bomb then tells him that he's a cynical person for attacking his friends even though he knew they had nothing to do with his problems. And at that moment, Bomb blows a hole through Beta's chest with a devastating ability called Floral Butterfly Piercing Technique. Beta takes it at point-blank range, and he ends up on his knees unable to fight anymore. Bomb stands over him and tells his downed enemy that Beta didn't hate him because he wanted revenge. Beta just needed someone to hate. But listening to Bomb makes Beta so furious that he gets a second wind, so he summons Phobos again with what little is left of his energy, while Sophia calls for him to stop. Beta insists that he's going to kill Bomb at any cost, as Bomb stands in front of him while Kun covers his best friend with a protective barrier. Kun tells Beta to give it up. Bomb does the same after he realizes that Beta's body can't handle the stress of another clash anymore. If he continues to fight, the boy's body will eventually give out on him. But still, Beta won't listen. He charges up Phobos and tells Bomb that he doesn't care if he dies fighting him as long as Bomb experiences the same pain and suffering he's felt. Bomb pleads with the boy as he charges Shinsu on his palm. At that moment, Beta notices the real Needle's bandage unfurling by just a bit, just as Bomb releases a fearsome wave of Shinsu from the palm of his hand right by Beta to force him to stop. Beta realizes that Bomb's drawing energy from the real Needle, which means he's now outmatched. He admits to himself that he doesn't stand a chance against Bomb anymore, even if he's at full power. At that moment, Beta starts to mock Bomb instead, as he slips in for a right hook that smacks the irregular in the face. He then asks Bomb why it's so bad to hate him. And after that, we see Beta go on a whole rant as his jealousy levels go through the roof. Beta even goes so far as to say that he should have been living Bomb's life if only the workshop didn't experiment on him. But Bomb calmly tells him that's not true. All of Bomb's experiences, good or bad, belong to him and him alone. He then tells Beta about how he was trapped in darkness for a long time and how he met friends in this tower, all to stress the point that no one will take those from him. Beta tries to tussle some more, but Sophia yells at him and begs him to stop. The workshop researcher then explains that the experiments that were conducted on Beta happened after that experiment. The workshop did this to try and turn an average human being into a complete living ignition weapon, so Bomb really has nothing to do with any of it. Beta then remembers that the Emily app clearly told him that he was experimented on to ultimately create jovial grace, and he can't believe that the chatbot lied to him. Beta realizes that Emily has used him. At that moment, the boy's body gives out and he collapses to the ground. Sophia tries to rush toward Beta to help him, but the workshop guards turn on the researcher to everyone's surprise. Sophia asks the guards what's going on, and they report that the higher-ups have given them the order to dispose of Beta. Bomb hears this and tells the guards not to go through with it, but they tell him to stay in his lane because this is a workshop matter that has nothing to do with the tournament. Bomb then makes a move against the guards, but he's beaten to the punch when he sees Arcraptor and Quatro arrive on the scene to hit a couple of the workshop lackeys with their powers. Rack then jumps in and kicks one of the other guards before Shibisu and Hats do the same. One of the lackeys seemingly points a gun at Sophia, but he's actually aiming for another workshop guard behind her. They then hear that same guard speak and notice that his voice sounds familiar. So the guard takes off his helmet and they find out that it's Liro Ro, who tells him he came there to help. Somewhere else, Mei is frustrated that Bomb managed to get away from them. She asks the mad dog of Yama if she should have just washed her hands of this earlier, but Varagarv just stays quiet. Mei suddenly gets a call from Reflejo, who tells her to prepare for battle. The Fug Fisherman then reveals that he's found the perfect bait to lure Bomb back to their lair, and we discover that he and Kasano have defeated Huaryun, Horyang, and Novik. According to Reflejo, this is going to be Bomb's final battle, when we find out that Kasano placed a tracking device in Horyang's pocket, which ultimately led to their capture. Reflejo congratulates the Devil's right arm for a job well done, and Kasano asks him if he has the item that Fug promised him. Reflejo tells him that he has it, but he'll have to give up the entire tournament to get on the Archimedes. Kasano doesn't mind. He doesn't want to play the game anyway. Besides, he mentions that his collaboration with Fug will come to an end once they hand him what he came for. Reflejo then asks Kasano about his end goal, and he tells the Fug fisherman that he just wants to wreck everything, including Fug and Jovial Grace. We then get to see a flashback from 4 years ago. It's the night when Kun left the rest of his old friends from the test floor after Bomb's apparent death. Shibisu chases after him and asks Kun what would have happened to their group if Rachel didn't kill Bomb. Kun admits that he doesn't know, but that prospect seems like a wonderful dream. In the present, the old gang has finally gotten back together, as Rak gives Bomb a tight hug. And for the first time in a long while, we even get to see both Bomb and Kun smile. Shibisu notes that his team has to be on their toes now that the strongest team is reunited. On the other hand, Iwa seems absolutely flabbergasted to see Bomb smile for the first time ever since she met him. Arkraptor tells her that it's nice to see Bomb happy like this. Shortly after, Bomb thanks Arkraptor and his friends from Team Sweet and Sour for helping him return to them. However, Bomb becomes sullen when he reports that Fug still has Horgang, but Arkraptor reassures him that the big guy will find a way to get back to them sooner or later. Bomb then checks in on Wanyan, and he finds out that his condition has stabilized thanks to the medical facility they took from the defeated workshop guards and Ro's efforts. Arkraptor then tells Bomb that it's good that Wanyan is going to make it, since it means they won't have to regret letting Beta live after what he did to their friend. At the same moment, we even see Yiwo telling Rak that she'll get him a new spear, and at her own expense to boot. Afterwards, Bomb turns to the unconscious Beta, who Sophia is currently nursing back to health. He asks the researcher if the boy's going to be alright, and Sophia tells him that Beta is fortunately out of the woods. However, they now have another problem, since Beta has shot up to the workshop's most wanted. Sophia blames herself for everything that happened to Beta, telling Bomb that he wouldn't have been so unhappy if only she was able to turn him into a perfect living ignition weapon. Bomb hears this and tells her that he doesn't agree with her. According to him, people like Beta, Kasano, and even Horgang weren't unhappy because they were imperfect living weapons. Meanwhile, Shibisu checks in on Kun to ask him why he's still so glum. Kun tells him that the real problem is about to start now that both the workshop and Fug are after them. To make matters worse, Kun can't think of an escape plan right now. Shibisu then wonders what's going on in the tournament in light of recent events. Ro then arrives to tell them that the tournament has been postponed. We then find out that the workshop battle's organizers are scampering right now to deal with the ongoing prison break-in and that Emily's capsule has been opened. To make their jobs harder, they have to deal with this without letting the fans know what's going on inside the Archimedes. Ro then informs Kun and the others that his colleagues should have arrived at the waiting room for participants as they speak. They're going to reverse engineer the summoning system there and reroute it so that Bomb's other friends can pass through it and regroup with them. In fact, Ro even tells the kids that even their allies who have been eliminated from the games are already on board with this plan. And as Ro puts it, they're all going to escape from there even before the final workshop battle round begins. While all this is happening, Reflejo tells the Mad Dog Verogov to inform Jovial Grace that the finals will begin right at this moment. Madarako realizes that the prison riot within the Archimedes was all a diversion to allow Bomb and his friends to escape. He then accepts that his profits will take a hit, but it's best if they make a move against them now. Then, one of Madarako's underlings arrives inside his office to tell him that there's a messenger waiting for him. Meanwhile, we see that Iwa made good on her promise to buy Rak a new weapon, as they stare at a new spear called Mad Shocker being transported inside the item store. Ro continues to debrief his allies and tells him that there's no more reason to stay in this area, considering that they already got their hands on the grand prize of the workshop battle anyway. He then cautions them to make their way out of there quickly before the Fug rankers arrive. Knowing that they're pretty much beset on all sides by their enemies, Kun asks Ro where else they can go, and Ro reveals that he's currently working with Wohaik Sung and that they're on standby to receive them when ready. But the bigger reveal here is when Ro tells Bomb that one of Wohaik Sung's founders is none other than Yurik Mizuno, the same guy that Bomb and Team Sweet and Sour a few years ago when they took a test to retrieve the flower Zagena. Not only that, but we also find out that Yurik is known as the absolute strongest guy in the tower according to Shibisu, so much so that Yurik's power alone is equivalent to that of an entire great family. And just to keep the hits coming, Ro also reveals that Yurik is an irregular and he wants to meet Bomb. In fact, Ro tells him that it's been his mission all along to set up this meeting between the two irregulars. However, Bomb tells Ro that he can't just leave Hwaryun and the others. Then he suddenly receives a call from Yudo's pocket. Bomb answers it to discover that Reflejo is the one on the other line. The Fug fisherman then informs Bomb that he's been giving Hwaryun a lesson in manners since they captured her. According to Reflejo, Hwaryun is still alive, but he's going to kill her, Novik, and Horgang in the most painful way possible if Bomb doesn't come and rescue them. Reflejo then makes a wager with Bomb. If he manages to save his friends, Bomb wins and Reflejo will concede defeat. However, he'll be keeping Hwaryun for himself no matter what. Reflejo then tells Bomb to meet him at the same place where the real needle was kept. Kun then asks Bomb why Hwaryun is here after the call ends. Bomb explains everything to his teammates, which makes Kun realize that saving Hwaryun might lead Fug to them eventually. But his thoughts are cut short when Bomb elects to save Hwaryun, Novik, and Hworyang alone. Shibisu advises against this and tells his old friend that it's probably a setup, while Ro tries to reason that going out there is just too risky. But Bomb's mind has been made up in spite of his friend's protests. So, knowing that there's no persuading his best friend, Kun tells Bomb that he and Rock are coming with him. He then asks Ro how much time they've got, and the Wohaek Song agent informs him that they only have about half an hour to make the rescue and get themselves back here. So, Kun wastes no time to formulate a plan to do this efficiently. He pairs up Koichiro and Shibisu to rescue Novik, Arc Raptor and Niwa to save Hworyang, while he, Bomb, and Rak rescue Hworyun and deal with Reflejo. Shibisu maintains his position that this is impossible to do in the span of 30 minutes, but no one listens to him. Because while he's protesting, Bomb's already telling Kun that maybe he should go alone, to which his best friend tells him that's absolutely not going to happen, especially now that they finally reunited after so long. Unknown to everyone else, Kun is already making calculations in his head, as he surmises that she will have probably already been summoned at this moment. He and the others then turn around when they hear a loud noise inside the room. Somewhere else, May and Varagarv are waiting for Bomb and his friends to arrive. Suddenly, May sees a bright light shooting down from the sky and is surprised to find an undeniably annoyed Endorsi and Hat standing in front of her when the dust settles. Meanwhile, the original test floor gang of Bomb, Kun, and Rak have arrived deep within the Fug lair to look for Hworyun. Bomb then tells Kun that they're going to find Hworyun and Reflejo inside the other room at the end of the cavern. He then asks Kun how he found out that Endorsi possesses Bong Bong, and he tells his best friend that he used the Emily app to find out about it. Kun reluctantly admits that he's become reliant on the chatbot up until this point. Still, he can't shake off the feeling that there's something sinister about the Emily app. According to him, this chatbot might be the most fearsome weapon in the workshop battle if someone were to use it for deception. But Kun shakes off the thought as they prepare to go look for Hworyun and Reflejo. On the way there, he tells Bomb that Endorsi and Hats have probably arrived at Varagarv and May's location to buy them some time while they conduct the rescue operation. They eventually get to the other side of the room to find a bloodied and beaten Hworyun lying face front on the ground. Meanwhile, Ro is back on the ship as he speaks to his ally, who currently has their other friends, such as Gosang, Prince, and Misang, inside the summoning area at the waiting room. They're just waiting for Bomb and the others to arrive so that they can make for Wohaek Song afterwards. However, Ro requests for a 30-minute extension, to which his partner reluctantly agrees to. After the call, Sophia pleads with Ro to take Beta with them. Ro is taken aback by the request, but Sophia tells him that this is the least he can do for the boy after putting him through hell. And since Beta is bound for extermination at the workshop and has been longing for freedom all along, Sophia thinks that having him come with Ro will be the best decision to make. We then find out that Sophia was just like the other kids who got experimented on. She grew up in the middle area. However, she was lucky and smart enough to be a workshop researcher when she grew up. Sophia believed that the experiments she and the workshop conducted would help the children of the middle area become strong, which would then ultimately stop them from being taken advantage of. She thought that the other kids who died during the experiments was a necessary evil to achieve this goal, but now she's come to realize she's been mistaken all along. It turns out that Bomb made her realize earlier that people like Hworyang and Kasano were only able to survive their experiments because of the love that they received from her. In the present, Sophia admits that she's the worst person to be taking care of children at this point, so she begs Ro to help everyone, from Beta to Bomb, get out of the workshop so that they can be happy even just for a bit. Ro then gives Sophia his word that he'll do it. Beta then regains consciousness at that moment and screams out Kasano's name as he realizes that he's been the one behind this whole mess. We then find out that the messenger that arrived in Madarako's office is Kasano, as he hands the old man a test tube containing some red fluid. Meanwhile, Endorsi engages with May in her trademark sass. The princess tells their enemies to shut their mouths and stop looking for her boyfriend, Bomb. Hats tells Endorsi to cool her jets, but he gets some shade too, as Endorsi tells him to back away from her because he stinks. May then admits that the only reason she befriended Anak was to spy on Team Shibisu. She continues to try and get under Endorsi's skin by asking her if she's going to be alright becoming similar to Anak's mother by dating Bomb. That remark grinds Endorsi's gears as she suddenly leaps towards Ron May to attack her. At this exact moment, the mad dog of Yama shows his inhuman reflexes as he defends his teammate from the princess's attack. Endorsi then asks if this annoying person who just got in her way is May's bodyguard. Suddenly, Endorsi feels the side of her left leg burst. The mad dog Varagarv then tells Endorsi that she's playing with her life by attacking them. Meanwhile, Bomb calls for Hworyun inside the cavern. Reflejo steps in from the shadows and tells him that she's still alive for now, as the Fug fisherman prepares to fight Bomb and his friends. The three of them notice that there's something different about Reflejo now, as they see that he's covered in shadows, and Kun realizes that this is the Fug fisherman's trump card. He then takes into account the fact that Reflejo has a hostage right now, and Kun wonders if the odds are against them. In the meantime, Bomb tells Reflejo that he knows the Fug Fisherman wanted to kill Hwaryun all along. At that moment, Reflejo tells Bomb that they've had enough chit-chat, so he waves his weapon around as shadows trail it and tells his opponents that the final round will begin now. Back in Dorsey, Hatz is shocked to see Verigarv land a blow on Dorsey's leg without even touching her. The princess then sicks Bongbong on her enemy, but the Mad Dog blocks it with the help of May's lighthouse. And Dorsey then resets as she complains that Verigarv ruined her dress during their previous clash. Not too far away, May gives Dorsey a lowdown of what she's dealing with, as the Lightbearer tells him that Verigarv is one of the best results to ever come from fusing the bloodlines of many great families. This makes her teammate not only a powerful regular, but basically the perfect fighting dog. Plus, he now possesses the item called the Blood Tamara after winning it at the one-shot, one-opportunity game. This item gives the Mad Dog temporary invulnerability. Add that to his Shadow Wolves technique, which May considers as the most powerful counterattack of all, and Verigarv might very well be considered invincible. Dorsey isn't impressed by all this, but Hatz is a bit worried that this is the first time that Dorsey has to face an opponent as dangerous as the Mad Dog. All the while, Iwa's team continues to look for Hworyun inside the Fug lair. They regroup with Quaitro, who then tells him that he hasn't seen the big guy anywhere. Shibisu's team are in the same situation too, as they try to look for Novik but discover that their enemies must have hidden them somewhere. At the same time, Reflejo has started to attack Bomb and his friends. He tries using his giant shadow-covered rod to crush his enemies, but Bomb, Rak, and Kun manage to dodge the hit. Still, they notice that Reflejo has some destructive power in him. Kun realizes that he's not a typical E-rank regular, so he asks Reflejo why he's so jacked up, and the Fug member reveals that he's a shadow of Lord Pokken, the organization's executive. It turns out that Pokken imparted some of his shadow to Reflejo to give him this kind of power. Using it allows him to break free from the rules of the game and temporarily become stronger than a B-rank regular at the same time. Reflejo then tells Bomb to just give up now, but the boy refuses. So Reflejo charges up a Shinsu attack to try and kill him. Bomb intercepts the hit with his own Shinsu blast. He then commands Kun to take Hworyun to safety while he puts pressure on Reflejo. Kun runs toward Hworyun while Rak attacks a shadowy Fug member to give his friend an opening. The crocodile clashes with their enemy, as Reflejo uses a technique called the Second Shadow, Full Moon Shadow, that creates a gigantic shadow ring around them. Kun counters this with his lighthouse's quadruple cube blockage, which zaps Reflejo for a moment. However, the Fug member recovers quickly and asks Kun if he really thought that would hurt him. Well, this is Kun we're talking about, so he reveals it's just a diversion, as Bomb appears right behind Reflejo. Bomb tells him that he's going to take back Hworyun, and Reflejo responds that he can try. Back in his office, Madarako receives a report from one of his lackeys that Reflejo went rogue and decided to play out the workshop battle's final round on his own. The underling asks his boss if that's alright, since Reflejo took the item that Madarako promised to give to the workshop. Madarako says it's fine. And now he's not even obligated to hold up his end of the deal. Plus, the high ranker remarks that the information that Reflejo gave to him is very useful, so he gives the order to prepare the melting solution to finally end the workshop battle. Meanwhile, the traveler sneaks around the Archimedes to go and look for the real Emily. He notices some guards have already caught a few of the other escapees, so he scans the vicinity for an alternative route. The traveler then chooses to go with the classic option of skulking around the air vents to avoid detection. The traveler eventually reaches the area where the real Emily is, so he drops down from the air vents and continues on foot. When he gets near his destination, however, he sees Kasano about to enter Emily's room. Back at Bomb's team, Reflejo is proving himself to be a huge problem for the three heroes. Aside from being a formidable opponent, Reflejo's got no problem using Hworyun as a human shield whenever Bomb tries to hit him with an attack. This causes Bomb to stop in his tracks and pull back whenever he attempts to mount a counterattack against Reflejo's techniques. Their fight goes on, with Bomb being forced to purely go on the defensive. He dodges one of Reflejo's swings, and this makes Bomb think he's got an opening. So Bomb decides to rescue Hworyun first, but Reflejo catches a whiff of his plan and lets him know that it's not going to work. Reflejo then takes another swing at him, which Bomb is able to dodge again before using his foot to block Reflejo's weapon. But the shadowy Fug fisherman just keeps pressuring Bomb to go on the defensive. And to make matters worse, Bomb notices that his flow control ability doesn't work on his opponent. Reflejo then gives Bomb an exposition about why he is immune to the technique. According to the Fug fisherman, Bomb is unable to use the flow control on him, because Reflejo is now a legitimate shadow without a uniform Shinso flow that his enemies can manipulate. He goes on to even tell Bomb about his weakness, that he'll die after using up all his shadow abilities. But Reflejo's okay with that, as he lets Bomb know that it's worth dying if it means he can achieve his long-cherished dream. In the meantime, Kun stays on the sidelines to continue doing recon on Reflejo. He now thinks that the Fug member has the upper hand. For one, Bomb's technique does not work on him. While Kun's analyzing the field, Reflejo continues to assault Bomb, as he uses a technique called the Third Shadow, the Deadly Moon Shadow, which allows him to conjure 5 bangs simultaneously. Kun sees this and becomes pressured knowing that his lighthouse can't defend against all 5 blasts. Meanwhile, Bomb can only tell himself that they've got to intercept each and every one of Reflejo's bangs. Reflejo then launches his Shinsu toward Kun, while Bomb tries to take them down with his own bangs. But it turns out that Reflejo was just using a feint, because at this exact moment, Bomb notices the 5 bangs from the Deadly Moon Shadow technique come together to form a single concentrated supercharged bang. And that single Shinsu-packed bang? Yeah, Reflejo aimed it directly at Bomb, and it hit him square in the midsection. Still, Bomb remains conscious and has no plans of giving up. He tries to find the right moment to shoot Reflejo with one of his bangs mid-fall, but he stops when he sees the Shadowman raising his arm to use Hua-Ryun as a shield again. Bomb gets caught off guard for a second, and Reflejo takes advantage of this by barraging him with more Shinsu blasts. Rack sees this and tries to go after Reflejo, but Kun urges him to stop, since their enemy will just end up using Hua-Ryun as a shield. At this point, Kun takes a moment to further investigate how they can deal with their opponent. Kun is aware that Reflejo is still being cautious in spite of this, since he knows that Bomb might release the full power of his needle at any moment. He's also aware that Reflejo is using Bomb's genuine concern for Hua-Ryun against him, but when Kun notices that Reflejo is using his hostage as a shield, he calls for Rack to tell him he's come up with an idea to defeat their opponent. While this is going on, the Traveler calls out to Kasano in front of the real Emily's containment room and asks who he is. Kasano correctly surmises that the Traveler is one of the poor rubes Emily deceived, but he's genuinely surprised that the guy made it this far. The Traveler then asks Kasano how he knows about this and if he's also another one of the unwitting souls that got deceived by Emily, to which Kasano replies no. But he lets the Traveler know that he is here to get Emily out. Kasano then uses a test tube to open the door to the containment chamber. He then tells the Traveler that he's going to show him the truth after going such a long way. So the boy walks into the room with Kasano, and what he sees inside is an absolute shocker, as we find out that the real Emily is just pure blue liquid inside a large vat. The Traveler asks Kasano if this is indeed the real Emily, and Kasano tells him the whole story behind the thing that has deceived all these poor souls. It turns out that the researchers of the workshop conducted a couple of studies when they started collaborating with Fug. The first one was how to turn a living human into a living ignition weapon, while the second study was about how to dissolve a human who had turned into an ignition weapon. The workshop succeeded on both fronts. Kasano then reveals that Emily was part of the second study. She is, or at least she was, an actual living person who was turned into an ignition weapon and then subsequently dissolved. So the blue liquid that he and the Traveler are staring at? Yeah guys, that's Emily. She's basically a sentient liquid forever trapped inside the workshop's vat. Kasano goes on to tell the Traveler that the workshop marked Emily for extermination right after she was dissolved. However, one woman opposed that decision and managed to ultimately keep Emily alive. When that happened, other scientists in the workshop, such as Io and Punk, realized how valuable Emily's powers could be. So they pretended to help her by placing her in this giant vat and creating a device to control her. In truth, these scientists had their own motives for allowing Emily to stay alive. Their goal was to recruit as many people as possible with the Emily chatbot and ultimately to control humanity using the app. To do this, the scientists started working with Madarako's merchant group, who then funded the research and the distribution of the phones containing the Emily app. In exchange for this, Madarako was allowed to intervene with the workshop battle as he pleased and to ultimately be allowed to secretly take Emily away after the tournament. In addition to that, Io and Punk were promised to receive the most expensive compressed flask the merchant group had to offer. Now, just for some context guys, compressed flasks, also known as compression flasks, are these small devices that look like test tubes which are used to seal and contain living ignition weapons, so they're very valuable in the tower. The Traveler listens to all this and refuses to believe Kasano, but the Devil's right arm tells him that every single word that Emily told people like him was a lie. Kasano thinks that Emily did this to deliberately fool people, or she had become delusional herself after years of being a sentient liquid in a tank, leading Emily to think that she's still an actual person. In fact, all those images we saw of the real Emily up until this point, the one where we saw her as a humanoid woman lying in a pod, was all, well, just an illusion to mislead us into thinking that Emily was still human. The Traveler finally realizes that he's been living a lie up until now, and all he can do at this point is ask how people can do something so cruel to their fellow man, as he feels pity for the sentient blue liquid swirling around inside the tank. At that moment, Kasano says he's going to leave and invites the Traveler to come with him if he wants. He then reveals that he used his own compression flask, the same one that he received from Madarako, to steal Emily, and tells the Traveler that he's going to bring change in the tower using her power. Later, Kasano walks up to a battered Hworyang. The big guy asks his old friend what kind of deal he struck with Fug, but the only answer Kasano gives Hworyang is that he had no other choice. He then invites the big guy to come with him to a path that they can take to change what Kasano calls this disgusting world. However, Hworyang refuses and tells him that he has friends to come back to and a woman that he loves. If he's going to leave with these people who he has grown to love and consider his family. Hearing that, Kasano bids his farewell to his old friend. Unknown to them, a girl with rabbit ears has been hiding nearby all this time and listening to their conversation. Back at Kun's team, Kun prepares to spring his plan with Rek. He asks the crocodile the name of his new spear, and Kun discovers that it's the Mad Shocker. However, he's disappointed to find out that Rek chose a throwing spear instead of one made for close combat. Still, Kun works with what they've got and tells Rek to throw Mad Shocker when his lighthouse gives him the signal. Meanwhile, Reflejo starts to think that he's gotten the better of Bomb, while he looks up at the roof of the cavern and waits for the dissolving solution to come pouring down at any minute to fulfill his dreams. At that same moment, Kun and Rek go on the offensive as the crocodile warrior runs at full speed toward their enemy. He uses Kun's lighthouse as a platform to leap up and throw the Mad Shocker when he sees an opening. The spear shoots straight for Reflejo, who manages to sidestep it, but Kun then uses his lighthouse to teleport Mad Shocker right behind Reflejo as it cuts through the air toward its target. Reflejo reacts in the nick of time and dodges the spear, all the while noting that it's one powerful weapon. Before he can react again though, he sees Kun lunging at him with a knife in his hand. Reflejo notices the double feint that Kun and Rek pulled off, so he uses Hwaryun as a shield, thinking that it's going to stop Kun from pressing his attack. But Kun isn't as soft as Bomb, guys. You know he's willing to do what it takes to win. So Kun continues his attack and stabs Hwaryun. At this point, we find that Bomb has lost consciousness after eating Reflejo's devastating Shinsu attack earlier. But curiously enough, the seal covering Real Needle has started to unravel. Stabbing Hwaryun shocks even Reflejo. He can't believe that the blue-haired boy in front of him is more cold-blooded than he is. In fact, Kun himself admits that it's his usual style to be ruthless, but not today. Because today, as Kun reveals, he's decided not to abandon anyone. He then reveals that the knife he used to stab Hwaryun wasn't just an ordinary blade. It's actually the price he got for performing well during the one-shot, one-opportunity game, the White Heavenly Mirror. It's a knife that has magical abilities, and one of those is the power to compress and seal anyone it stabs in the heart within its blade. We then find out that Hwaryun is safe and sound inside the White Heavenly Mirror. Kun then tells Reflejo that he knows that the Fug member has subpar defensive capabilities. This explains why Reflejo had to take a hostage and use her as a shield. Of course, Kun also takes this moment to gloat and tell his enemy that he should have taken better care of his hostage. Reflejo becomes furious and summons a bunch of bangs to hit Kun. Kun knows that they need Bomb to block Reflejo's assault, as the Fug member uses a technique called Death Moon Shadow to release his bangs directed right at Kun. However, blue Shinsu bolts spring up from the ground below to intercept Reflejo's technique before it can even get close to Kun and Rek. At that moment, Kun celebrates the fact that Bomb has woken up. Meanwhile, we find out that the eavesdropper from earlier is none other than Shia. With the coast clear, she stares at the unconscious Hworyang, while she rants about how this whole experience with Team Fug has become an unbridled mess. Shia then weighs her options and tries to decide whether to call for Bomb or just try to get her money from Fug. Suddenly, she hears Koichiro and the others approaching not too far away as they continue to search for Hworyang. While this is happening, Hatson and Dorsey gear up for another clash with Mei and the Mad Dog. Hats comes up with a plan to go on the offensive, and we discover that he's committed to using the pipe he got earlier as his new sword. And Dorsey thinks he's an idiot for using a simple pipe as his new sword, but Hats tells her not to underestimate his new weapon. The princess likes the plan, but wonders if Hats has stopped from being a team player. But the swordsman reassures her that beating the Mad Dog and Mei is for the team. Still, he doesn't deny that he also wants to blow up these guys to smithereens as revenge for what they did to Bomb. And Dorsey hears this and becomes even more determined to defeat their opponents when she recalls that Rek told her about Rachel's betrayal. In fact, it sort of makes Dorsey fall in love with Bomb even more, and if that wasn't enough, the princess takes a look at Mei's face again. Doing so makes the princess realize that Mei and Rachel are similar, with both of them having blonde hair, and most notably, that Rachel and Mei are a couple of disgusting traitors. The two combatants then spring into action, as Dorsey tells Hats to cover her. Mei thinks their opponents are making a stupid move rushing in like that, but Hats proves that this pipe was not to be messed with when he uses demonic fish wheel dance, white wave demonic explosion. He stops in his tracks after performing the technique, with his new weapon pressed right on Varagarv's abdomen. Mei calls the swordsman a dummy, telling him that kind of attack won't work on the Mad Dog, but Hats reveals that he wasn't planning on hitting the Mad Dog with it. The technique he just unleashed was meant to destroy all of Varagarv's shadow wolves, and it worked like a charm. Hats thanks Kasano for unintentionally making him stronger than before, as Dorsey teleports behind their enemy. The Mad Dog tells Dorsey that she's more foolish than he thought if she thinks her attacks will work on him, but Dorsey has other plans. Instead of smacking the Mad Dog of Yama, she uses Bonbon to teleport both of them hundreds of feet above the island. She then tells him that he might be invincible because of the Blood Tamara, but she's sure that the invincibility buff he gives has its limits. Dorsey then wonders if Varagarv can survive falling from this height. And in a move that proves Dorsey is one of the scariest characters in Tower of God, she tells the Mad Dog that they're about to find out together. Back inside the cavern, Kun notices that there's something different about Bomb. Reflejo knows what it is. because when the dust settles, they all discover that Bomb has fully activated the real needle. Rack approaches Bomb to ask him if he's alright, and he tells his friend that everything's good. However, Bomb doesn't tell Rack that he's feeling something peculiar right now, that activating the real needle is an experience similar to the fake one but somewhat different. Bomb ultimately shakes it off as he and Rack get back on the field to face Reflejo. We then catch up with the Archimedes and find out that the workshop guards have rounded up all the travelers who escaped their cells. Io and Punk celebrate the news but are distracted when they see a thin sliver of red light falling from the sky. They recognize it as Bong Bong and wonder why Dorsey is at the water stadium. While this is happening, Reflejo gauges if something changed about Bomb now that he has activated the real needle. From his perspective, Bomb still looks like an E-rank regular. He then remembers the first time he received his shadow powers from his boss when Pokken told him that Reflejo deserved this share of his shadow because he lost everything to the 10 great families. Back then, the Fug executive told Reflejo that it was only obvious to give power to the people who deserved to have it. Reflejo then lunges at Bomb to test the boy if he truly deserves the real needle's power. He hits Bomb with 5th Shadow, Sphere Moon Shadow, and launches a sharp Shinsu beam, which Bomb dodges. However, Reflejo changes its trajectory with Cross Full Moon Shadow to try and hit Bomb at point-blank range. Bomb manages to evade it again, as he gears up to apply flow control on his enemy. Reflejo thinks it won't work, but he suddenly freezes in place mid-swipe. Even Kun and Rack are surprised to find out how Bomb did it, as their friend dashes behind Reflejo to hit him with a palm strike that sends the Fug member flying. Reflejo can't believe that flow control worked on him this time, but Kun knows that Bomb was able to pull it off with the help of the real needle. Upon realizing that, Kun thinks to himself that Bomb has acquired a godlike power. Reflejo notices this too and concludes that the needle has chosen Bomb as its rightful wielder. Meanwhile, Kun checks up on Bomb, who tells him that he can still continue fighting, but he's not sure if he can keep using the real needle. Reflejo then remembers his mission and tells Bomb that he can't accept the fact that the needle has chosen him before adding that Bomb is not the god who will fulfill Fug's wishes. Hearing this, Bomb tells him that he's right, he's not their god, because their god is a delusion born of their weakness. Bomb then lunges at Reflejo, who uses Dash Moon Shadow to attack his enemy, but Kun blocks it with his lighthouse's quadruple barrier. They find an opening in Reflejo's defense, so Rack takes advantage and hurls his spear at the Fug member. Kun then uses his lighthouse to teleport the spear and direct it straight at their opponent's blind spot. Reflejo gets hit and loses his balance. At that moment, Bomb rushes in to berate Reflejo and all of Fug for calling him their god but rejecting him when they didn't need him anymore. At the same time, we find out that the light in the sky that Io and Punk saw earlier is actually Dorsey and the Mad Dog free-falling towards the island. They hit the ground the same time as Bomb plunges his needle straight into Reflejo, shouting at the Fug member that this is the end. Everyone outside the cavern sees Dorsey after she leaves a gigantic crater in the middle of the island, but the princess is a bit disappointed to find out that the fall didn't kill Verigarv. Meanwhile, Madarako spots Dorsey from his suite and wonders if Reflejo failed his mission. Regardless, he orders one of his underlings to start pouring the solution to melt Bomb on everyone inside the Fug lair. While this is going on, Kun marvels at how powerful the real needle is, but he also notices that Bomb is having trouble handling it. Kun thinks about how powerful Bomb could be if he unlocked its true potential, but he also remembers that pretty much everyone is going to put them in their crosshairs as long as Bomb has the needle. Reflejo then struggles to get on his feet while he complains about Bomb being the chosen one. He then has a flashback and we find out that one of the 10 great families killed Reflejo's entire tribe and gouged out his eyes in the past because he gave the Princess of Jihad, Yulia, a funny look. This memory just further convinces Reflejo that this world always gives power to those who don't deserve it. And in the present, he tells Bomb and the others that it's too late for them to escape because the solution is about to pour into the lair. At that moment, the Archimedes has arrived right on top of the Fug lair as one of Madarako's men telepathically tilts the vat containing the solution. Outside, Hats tells the Mad Dog to take the loss and withdraw from the tournament or he'll kill May. Team Mad Dog accepts the deal, and Hats tells them that they can just ask for a rematch in the future. But he and Dorsey will be the strongest D-rank regulars by that time. May then tells them that they should hurry and save their friends, because at that same moment, they all turn around to see that the solution is about to be poured into the lair. Inside, Kun tells Reflejo that he'll die too once they all get submerged into the liquid, but the Fug member simply tells him that he was prepared to die right from the beginning, as the exit to the lair caves in. Reflejo then tells Bomb that he baited his group to make them come to him, and in the end, it was his plan to kill everyone. Kun wastes no time to mobilize everyone, as he calls Shibisu to ask if they found their missing allies and update him about the solution. Shibisu informs Kun that they still had no luck finding Horyang or Novik. Arkraptor and Neo are in the same situation, and the Yon girl has almost lost all hope of finding their friends when Shia comes out of the shadows to tell them that she's going to help them. Yu and Arkraptor don't trust her at first, but they start to believe Shia when she tells them that she gave up her big payday for this. Moments later, they call Kun to let him know that they found Novik and Horyang. In the meantime, Shibisu rushes to regroup with the rest of the team, but he's got bad news. The tournament's hosts know they're there, and to complicate matters further, Dorsey can't extract them because Bongbong has spent all its energy with the fight against Vergarv. Kun starts to panic as the solution starts falling from the hole on top of the cavern. But Dorsey tells them to hang in there because there's no way in hell that she's going to let them die. At the same time, Ro and his partner Quan Blitz start to feel pressure when they notice that they only have 5 minutes left to make it to Wohaik Song. Ro holds out hope that the rest of their allies will make it, but he stops when he sees the Archimedes dumping the solution into the cavern. Ro realizes that Bomb and the rest of his students must have won the final match when he sees a Fug Ranker dumping the dissolving liquid into the lair. So, Ro doesn't waste time to order Quan to start their ship's engine and beeline it to rescue them. He also tells his partner to contact Hatsling and tell him they have a code D. Meanwhile, we see that the interior of the Fug lair has become an absolute hellhole as the solution rains down upon Bomb and his friends. Bomb tries to keep it together, but his body's too weak after using the real needle during his fight with Reflejo. At the same time, Io and Punk confront Madarako inside the suite on the Archimedes. They're outraged that Madarako is putting them all in danger by allowing audiences to see that he's attempting to murder the tournament's contestants with the solution. Punk and Io threaten Madarako that they'll terminate their contract, but the high ranker tells him that he doesn't care about that. He already handed the compressed flask he promised him to Kasano anyway, who's already flown away from the Archimedes with Emily. Io and Punk become so angry that they bust out their electric guitars to throw down with Madarako, but the high ranker simply tells them to come at him, because at this point, Madarako has already made preparations to make sure that Io and Punk's teacher won't be able to find out what happened here. In fact, Madarako plans on making the Archimedes disappear after he gets the needle to make sure there aren't any loose ends that will connect him to the incident. Back inside the lair, Kun is out of options. Bomb's too weak to help them get out of there, and his lighthouse's energy has been all spent. Suddenly, Kun sees their ship flying towards the Fug Ranker, who then tries to blast it with Shinsu. However, Ro beats him to the punch with his own Danyan-style weapon reinforcement technique, Lightning Strike, to blow the Fug Ranker out of the sky and prevent the Archimedes from dumping more of the solution right into the cavern. He then contacts Kun to tell him that Quant is now on his way with their ship to pick them up. In the meantime, Ro's going to buy them some time while he fights the Ranker that Madarako sent. Afterwards, Kun informs the rest of the team to mobilize and get ready to leave. Shibisu asks him how he, Rack, and Bomb are going to escape the lair, to which Kun replies that they're going to wait for Dorsey to teleport them using Bongbong. While this is happening, Ro fights the Fug Ranker over the skies above the water stadium. He then informs the guy that Hatsling has already hacked into the Archimedes surveillance cameras and the arena to broadcast all the shady stuff that Madarako and the workshop have been up to during the tournament. In fact, we even discovered that Madarako has been live-streamed when he snuffed out Io and Punk inside his office. The only thing that Ro and his allies have decided to keep a secret is any and all information about Bomb's needle. Inside their lair, Dorsey and Hats find out that the entrance to Bomb's location has been sealed off. Dorsey tries to brute force her way into the room, but Hats dissuades her from doing this for fear of making the entire place crumble. Dorsey then thinks of a way to jumpstart Bongbong again, and she gets an idea when she sees the energy pack that Hats is carrying on his back. At the same time, Reflejo continues to taunt Bomb while the whole room they're in falls apart. Bomb asks Reflejo if he's satisfied that a lot of people might die for his desire to get revenge, and if he's going to die happy knowing that he was just a tool for Fug's goals. Reflejo tells Bomb that he has no problem with this, because he likes being submissive, that even being exploited can be a source of hope sometimes. Reflejo tells Bomb that he can never understand the way he feels. And in his dying breath, Reflejo uses his 8th shadow technique to destroy the platform they're standing on in order to make sure that the solution down below dissolves Bomb. And in his last moments, the Fug fisherman gets a final glimpse of Yulia. They all start to freefall, with Reflejo finding peace knowing that Bomb's going to get killed here. But he ends up dying disappointed when Dorsey suddenly teleports into the cavern using Bongbong to whisk away Bomb and his friends. A man in an all-white suit then steps into Madarako's room while all this is happening, putting out a cigarette on the floor as he enters the office. And inside the ruined Fug lair in the middle of the water stadium, Dorsey, Bomb, Kun, and Rack disappear in a flash of red light, while Reflejo falls to his death. Meanwhile, the man in white greets Madarako. The high ranker turns his head and there's fear in his eyes when he recognizes who just entered his office. Somewhere on the outskirts of the island, Mei gets a piggyback ride from the Mad Dog as they make their exit. Mei tells her teammate that it's a good thing they left before all the chaos started in the lair. She's a bit disappointed that they lost the workshop battle, but Mei remains optimistic when she tells Vergarv that there's always a next time for him to become a Fug Slayer candidate. We then find out that Bomb and his friends have made it out of the cavern safely, as Dorsey uses Bong Bong to teleport them near its entrance. At that same moment, Vespa arrives with the rest of their group in tow, and everyone's just happy to see that they each managed to escape the catastrophe inside the lair. It doesn't take too long for Quant to arrive with their ship, who tells him to double time it so that they can get out of there before the Fug Rankers get to their position. He informs the group that the rest of their mates at the waiting room are also getting transported to the ship. Back there, we see Hatzling fetching the others, while Dorsey, Bomb, and everyone prepare to board the ship. Suddenly, a ranker working for Madarako approaches their position and prepares to tussle with Bomb's gang before asking them to give up the real needle. Above the skies, Ro continues to buy time for his allies as he tries to tire out his opponent by avoiding a direct clash with him. Ro thinks that they're all set to get out of the place when Quant informs him that one of the enemy rankers has just caught up to them. The situation is only made worse by the fact that none from Bomb's group are ready for a fight right now after dealing with the recent events. So, Quant decides to pick up the slack and faces their enemy instead. However, the enemy rankers all receive a message from Madarako telling them to stand down and give up on retrieving the needle. We then find out that the man in white has pretty much taken Madarako hostage, as the high ranker informs his men not to do anything foolish for fear that the man in white would destroy their entire trade business. Madarako's goons then do as their boss tells them. Ro's opponent backs down as well and assumes that Ro got some help from Big Shot to call off the attack. The ranker then tells Ro that he got lucky during this bout, but he'll kill him the next time they meet. The ranker flies away, leaving Ro confused as to what the hell the guy was talking about when he mentioned this Big Shot. But he drops the thought and focuses on escaping when Quant arrives with their ship to pick him up. Inside the Archimedes, Madarako asks the man in white if he was watching them right from the very start. In reply to that, the man in white simply tells Madarako how flattered he is that the high ranker still recognizes him even after all this time. Madarako then tells the man that he's easily recognizable because of the cigarettes he smokes, a product of the highest quality that Madarako's company sells, and it is something that only a few select people in the tower can afford. Madarako then asks the man in white if he was the one who gave Fug the real needle in the first place, and the man in white just smiles back at him. He then tells Madarako that he is just here coincidentally as the head of the tournament in place of the great teacher. The man in white then snaps his fingers and tells Madarako that they should reward the tournament's victors. And at that moment, screens all around the 30th floor flash a message saying that Team Sweet and Sour are this year's workshop battle champions. Meanwhile, Bomb and all his friends celebrate the reunion as the ship flies farther and farther away from the Archimedes. Later, we then find the man in white again. This time, he's talking to the same person he's been speaking to over the radio. The voice from the radio tells him that humans are weird creatures, considering that they tend to rebel when they believe someone is above them, or conform to the system when they're given peace. According to the voice, those qualities are what separates actual humans from the people you'd find in the tower. They then ask the man in white if Madarako's group has backed off. The man in white says that they have, since their business at the workshop has stopped becoming profitable now. The voice then tells him that the recent turn of events will probably hit Fug hard while making an alliance with the workshop harder to kickstart. They then ask the man in white a question: who's the real Prince of Jihad to take the tower's last test? And it's at this point we finally put a name to the face and find out that the man in white is actually Pobado Gustang, one of the 10 great families' leaders. Gustang replies to the voice and tells them that they're being too impatient, so they should watch a little bit longer. Because according to Gustang, Bomb and his friend's adventure has just begun. Sometime later, Bomb and his companions finally manage to get to safety. Others like Shibisu and Chang celebrate with drinks, while Bomb, Kun, and Rat get some much-needed sleep. Wanyan continues to recover from his injuries, and their ship continues its flight away from the workshop and the troubles of the 30th floor. Not long after that, Bomb awakes from his sleep, but he still hasn't fully recovered as he sits up and notices that his body still feels heavy. Still, he turns his eyes to his two best friends who are still sleeping, and at that moment, Bomb realizes how happy he is to make it back to his old friends. Meanwhile, Wanyan has a nightmare where he finds himself trying to summon Bomb at the Pool of Calling. But instead of getting his friend, an apparition of Reflejo rises from water to tell him that he doesn't have the right to summon Bomb or to have any friends for that matter. Wanyan suddenly wakes up in bed and finds Iwa watching over him. Wanyan asks his teammate about Bomb and their other friends, to which Iwa tells him that they all made it out safely. Wanyan notices that they're not on the Archimedes anymore, and Iwa reveals that they're actually at a resort run by Wohaik Song after Ro and the others helped them escape. Well, suffice it to say that Wanyan is relieved to discover all of this. We also get a glimpse of Wanyan's red ring that has Jihad's symbol on it during this particular moment. Iwa then tells him to come out of his room when he's ready in order to go meet with their friends. They've been worried about him since Beta stabbed him in the back. Wanyan does as he's told and everyone's just happy to see him. In fact, Shibisu even starts calling him the hero of the workshop battle for coming in clutch and summoning Bomb. Shibisu then tells Wanyan to take care of their mutual friend for them, since he's the leader of Team Sweet and Sour. Wanyan is confused, thinking that they'll start climbing the tower with Team Shibisu from now on. But we find out that Shibisu and his group have just been promoted to D rank, so they have to ascend the tower again in 3 days. With that, Shibisu tells his new friend to become stronger so that they can meet on the upper floors and have a proper match. Wanyan happily accepts the challenge and is moved by Shibisu's words. Meanwhile, Chang watches this unfold and wonders how Wanyan was able to physically recover in the day after getting stabbed in the heart. Chang thinks that there might be something interesting going on with Wanyan, so he wonders if he should start following him. In fact, he's not alone on this front, as Chang notices Yiwa keeping an eye on Wanyan as well. Somewhere else at the resort, Hatsling, Quant, Ro, and a couple of other rankers are having a meeting. They talk about the tower's higher-ups must have gotten word about what happened at the workshop battle, especially considering that the event wasn't broadcast. Ro thinks that Hatsling is implying that someone with a lot of power in the tower set it all up to play out like this, but all Hatsling can be sure of is that Fug is having problems with their internal affairs. He thinks that maybe these higher-ups got involved to keep Bomb safe and hidden while Fug deals with their internal conflicts. Ro then tries to ask him if they can keep the details about Bomb private, and Hatsling's already way ahead of him. He says that he guarantees the secret will remain safe, especially since he doesn't want to bully his cute brother, referring to none other than Kun. We then discover that the 2 other rankers in the room are Majex and Tulalan. Hatsling asks Majex, who happens to be the resort's manager, where their vice captain is, and he says that the man is probably somewhere around the resort trolling for women. Ro then congratulates Tulalan for being recognized by Wohaik's song by just being a D-rank regular. And in the middle of their conversation, Quant tells him that all this talk about D-rank reminds him of the Hell Train. Everyone in the room reminisces about it, and we find out that the Hell Train is this infamous transport method that lets you go up 6 floors at once. It's got a reputation for always having almost no survivors by the end of this journey. It's pretty legendary too, since there are rumors that you can meet the most beautiful women in the tower inside the Hell Train. Plus, it's also a well-known fact that the final destination of the Hell Train is a place called the Hidden Floor. Hatsling tells Quant that he's been on the Hell Train before, but he doesn't answer his colleague when Quant asks if the rumors about it are true. He then tells Tulalan to try and test his luck at the Hell Train this year, but warns the boy that the competition this time around is going to be rough. According to him, there are going to be absolute monsters who might join the Hell Train this year, referring to the likes of Bomb. Speaking of Bomb, we get to enjoy seeing him just relax and chill at the balcony for the first time in a long while. He even gets a message on his pocket from Endorsi telling him to meet him at the gate later. So it's good vibes all the way. Meanwhile, on the 97th floor of the tower, something shady is about to go down within the secret lair of Fug Slayer Karaka. We see Jinsung approaching the huge, heavily guarded gates of the fortress. One of the large guards tries to block his path, and all Jinsung could say is how much he hates youngsters for not recognizing who they're talking to. Well, Jinsung remedies that in a matter of seconds, as he forces one of the guards to put some respect to his name when he drives his head into the ground. The other guard tries cleaving Jinsung with his axe, but the Fug mentor just takes the hit and doesn't even budge. Then, with a wave of his hand, Jinsung turns the guard into a battering ram and smashes the creature into the gates of the stronghold. Jinsung casually walks into the yard where hundreds of monsters attack him. But we all know this by now. He's not trapped in there with the monsters are trapped in there with him. Moments later, and after laying waste to an entire horde of palace guards, Jinsung walks into Karaka's throne room. He's actually pretty disappointed that he didn't even break his sweat killing Karaka's guards. Karaka welcomes him and they have a little chat, as Jinsung expresses his disappointment in his former student for targeting Bomb at the workshop battle. He mentions that another high-ranking Fug member, Murchia, has become perplexed with Karaka's recent actions. The Fug Slayer defends his point by telling Jinsung that it was the only way for Fug to achieve its goals, but Jinsung makes it known that Karaka doesn't speak for the organization. He did what he did out of some selfish desire. Jinsung then informs his old student that one of the doyens that co-conspired with Karaka was found dead. They have no leads, but Jinsung is hoping to find the doyen alive for questioning. Jinsung sort of implies that Karaka probably killed the doyen and tells his former pupil that his growth is scary, but Karaka replies that the only badass in this room is Jinsung. We also find out in this scene that Karaka has the same red ring that Wanyan has, which makes us think about the real identity of this Fug Slayer. Karaka then tells his old teacher that he knows that Jinsung knew all about his plan beforehand. According to the Slayer, everything that his old master did was for the purpose of weakening him and, ultimately, to move Bomb and the real needle to a safe location. Hearing that, Jinsung simply stands up from his seat and walks away, but not before telling his old student that he's going to regret it if he tries to overstep his bounds again. Jinsung also tells Karaka that Bomb is getting stronger much faster than he can imagine. And who knows, maybe the boy will come back to Fug in the future to take down Karaka. Jinsung leaves after telling his former student to think about what he's done. Alone in his throne room, Karaka receives word that there's a message from the submerged fish, who reports that about Bomb's current location. The submerged fish also tells him that Bomb will be going up the tower soon, and he'll probably take the Hell Train test to do it. Kraka then tells his underling to not make any mistakes this time around. The submerged fish leaves, and we discover that Kraka doesn't want to take down Bomb just because he hates the boy. He's actually scared that Bomb will become more powerful, so Kraka is trying to nip him in the bud. At the resort, Dorsey thinks Bomb has stood her up while waiting for him near the gate. But he ultimately arrives and she tells him that it's time to go on their date. We discover that Prince, Yua, and Rak are spying on them. Prince makes it known that he's super jealous of Bomb right now, while Yua tries her best to hide the fact that she wishes she was in Dorsey going out on a date with him. Kun tells the three busybodies that they're lame for stalking Bomb and sticking their noses in his personal life, so he breaks away from the group, telling them that he has more important matters to attend to. A short distance away from their group, Dorsey tells Bomb that they're going to go on their long-delayed romantic date. Later, Kun arrives at a restaurant to meet with Novik and Ran. Novik asks their team leader if he's planning on going up the tower with Bomb, which means their own team will be disbanded. However, Kun tells them that he blames himself for what happened to Dan and Ki Tang, so there's just no way he can let that slide. Instead of breaking up their group, Kun asks Novik and Ran to be their spare team. He explains that they're basically going to collaborate as they go up the tower, sharing information and exchanging members as needed. As such, Kun and Bomb will be in the main team, while Novik will be the one in charge of this B team. But they're not just going to be understudies there to support the main team. As Kun reveals, Novik's team will have a very important mission: to hunt down that traitor Rachel and her friends, and eliminate them. Novik and Ran are on board with Kun's proposal, but he wonders where they'll find more members for this new team. Kun tells him that he already found the perfect additions to this group, as Shia and Dan enter the restaurant. Meanwhile, Dorsey and Bomb have coffee. She also notices the three stalkers that have been following them, but decides not to confront them. In the middle of this, the princess starts to feel ill at ease now that she's on an actual date with Bomb and wonders if she had only been infatuated with him all those years ago. However, she confirms that she really has a thing for the guy when they start chatting, and Bomb tells Dorsey how happy he is that all his training led him to this particular moment. Oh, and Bomb hits her with that charming smile while telling her that he's happy that she's not lonely anymore. And Dorsey can't help but smile when she hears that. And you know what, guys? She actually falls for him harder than before, as the princess invites him to leave the cafe so they can go somewhere private. And just to get you up to speed, Rak, Yua, and Prince are absolutely slack-jawed when they see this happening. And Dorsey then uses her bonbon to teleport herself and Bomb to hang out at a nearby park. There, Dorsey finally asks Bomb if he plans on searching for Rachel now that this whole mess with Fug is now over. He remains silent, and the princess realizes that Bomb still hasn't gotten over Rachel. But instead of crying about it, Dorsey tells Bomb that she's going to give her an unforgettable memory right now, as she leans in close to him and plants a kiss on Bomb's cheek. He gets flustered, but Dorsey simply tells her never to forget about this moment until they meet again. And with that, the princess tells him that it's time for Bomb to go take her shopping. We then find that Kasano and the Traveler in an abandoned castle not too far away from the Archimedes. The boy asks the Devil's right arm where they're going and what he's planning to do with Emily. And it's here that we get another big reveal, as Kasano and the Traveler enter a room within the empty castle. Inside are four robed individuals gathered in the middle of the spacious room. One of them takes off their hood, and we discover that it's Rachel, who greets Kasano and the Traveler when they enter. The Traveler thinks something fishy is going on when he sees Rachel and the others inside the room, and his suspicions are confirmed when Kasano hands one of them a compression flask containing Emily. It's revealed that one of the people in Rachel's group is Michael when he takes the flask from Kasano and confirms that it's the genuine article. Rachel hears this and tells Kasano that they're now ready to rescue the tower from its fate. 3 days later, everyone at the resort holds a farewell party before Team Shibisu leaves for their upcoming climb. Kun asks Bomb if he's sad that their other friends have to leave so soon, but Bomb tells him that it can't be helped. Plus, he thinks it's better if they all become stronger once they meet again. Bomb asks Kun when they're going to meet Yurik, but Kun tells him that Yurik had to cancel because he caused trouble somewhere else in the tower recently. Still, Kun tells his best friend that the guy who told him this information isn't too reliable, so who knows? Maybe they'll meet Yurik sooner than later. Kun asks Bomb why he wants to meet the man, to which he says that he wants to learn more about what's outside of the tower, considering that Yurik is an irregular like him. Suddenly, Go-Sang arrives to inform them of some troubling news. She leads the three to Horyang's room, and we find out that the big guy has been unconscious ever since they left the workshop battle. We then discover that Sophia came along with Bomb's group during their escape, as he asks the former workshop researcher what's wrong with his friend. She then informs everyone that Horyang has remained unconscious this whole time because his devil power has been taken from him. Beta then tells him that he thinks Kasano did in order to turn himself into a perfect whole-living ignition weapon. The boy then explains that if that's true, Kasano would be more powerful than he or Bomb is right now. Wanyan is in the same room too, and he tells everybody that he hasn't informed the rest of their friends about Hwoarang's condition so as not to cause any unnecessary panic within the team. But he emphasizes that finding Kasano should be a priority in order to bring back Hwoarang. They wonder if they can use the Emily app to find the guy, but Beta informs them that the chatbot systems have been down since they left the workshop. He suspects that Kasano is responsible for this too, and surmises that he made a deal with Fug to use Emily for their own ends. They wonder how a simple chatbot can achieve that, but Sophia informs them that Emily isn't just an app. She comes clean and tells him Emily's whole story and expresses fear when she mentions that no one knows what might happen if Emily wakes up and activates her living ignition weapon. So this makes everyone in the room realize that they really need to find Kasano. Shortly after, Bomb, Rock, Kun, and Wanyan meet outside Hwoarang's room to come up with a plan to save their friend and stop Kasano. They don't have a clue how to go about it, so Bomb proposes that they go and ask Hwoarang. They then go to her room to ask for her help. Hwoarang doesn't want to do it at first, but Kun offers her a deal: Kasano's location in exchange for her freedom and inclusion to their team. Hwoarang accepts the offer and informs them about the Hell Train, which is a special test happening on the 35th floor. She explains that it's a bloody, hardcore express trip, but they'll most likely find Kasano there. Plus, they can even reach the hidden floor if they survive it. Wanyan asks Kun what they should do, and he tells them that it's going to take about a year and a half to reach the 35th floor. It's enough time to reach the Hell Train, so all they have to hope for right now is Hwoarang hangs on for that long too. They settle with that plan and disperse. Bomb's just about ready to leave the room when Hwoarang calls for him to say that it's nice to see him happy. She then tells him that it's what Jin Sung wanted for him all along. Hwoarang then relays a message for Bomb that she got from Jin Sung telling him that he has to get stronger to protect the happiness he feels right now. That's because, according to the message, Bomb will face great danger soon. She then goes on to tell that Bomb can then return to Fug once he realizes his true potential and get back at the organization's higher-ups who put him in danger. Sometime later, Team Shibisu says their farewells to Team Sweet and Sour as they board the ship going up the tower. Meanwhile, Hwoarang is in her room reading the news and discovers that the whole debacle at the workshop battle has been all covered up. Hwoarang then tells herself that a new story will begin soon, and it involves someone Bomb can neither guide nor control. Just like him, this person is a different kind of existence within the tower, someone who can change its destiny. With that, Hwoarang wonders what choice Bomb will make once he encounters this person, a person going by the name of Rachel. And that, friends, is the entire workshop battle arc. What can we say? What a ride it has been, and we know full well that Tower of God is just going to up the stakes from here on out. But what about you guys? What did you think of this arc? What do you think will happen on the Hell Train? Let's chat about it in the comments section below. Speaking of the Hell Train, you guys can expect that we're already hard at work producing the video covering that mega arc. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be the first to see it when it comes out. As always, thank you for joining us in this video, friends, and we'll catch you soon.